If you ever wondered what it took to get to Diamond in TFT, this is going to be the video for you because we are going to be reviewing 6 games today, and we are going to have 1 game at every single rank. So 1 at Iron, 1 at Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum, and Diamond, just to show you all what types of mistakes are being made at each level, what you need to do to win or do well in each level, and we are going to go over how to do this by using all sorts of playstyles. So we're going to do some standard leveling, we're going to do some 1 cost, 2 cost reroll, some 3 cost reroll, and we're going to go over some of the wackier augments that we can get. For example, there's one game where we're going to get Mana Zane and a salvage bin, and that whole game we didn't really know what direction we were going to go into until stage 4. There are going to be other games where I'm forcing some reroll comps and just seeing what types of conditions need to be met in order to go for those. And lastly, we are going to have 1 or 2 games where luck doesn't really go our way, and we'll see how to kind of play around that too. So let's just go into the games. Feel free to watch them one at a time, or you could watch the whole thing all at once. Even if the game isn't directly at your level, there's still a lot of learning to be had in each and every one of these games, because I'm still going to go over how I would play normally, and I guarantee you're making some mistakes that some of the other lower level players might make as well if you are higher, and vice versa. But let's go into game number 1, where we're going to be in an Iron game that has a pretty linear playthrough, so pretty much anyone can kind of do this. Also, don't forget, we will be going over the BunnyMuffins tip of the day at the end of the video. We started this game off with a tier, and then we got another tier and a belt. And we also have a 2-star Poppy and Lulu. This should automatically point you in a direction for a Spellslinger game or a Gadgeteen start into some sort of ability power comp later on. Obviously, in this augment selection here, Spellslinger Crest is kind of a no-brainer, but let's say that didn't happen to pop up, Jeweled Lotus would have been a very, very nice option too. I will note that I did not cherry pick the first 4 games that I played, which is the Iron all the way to Gold games, so we're just going to have to deal with any sort of good or bad luck that we end up getting. So we get an Annie as well from the Spellslinger Crest, which gives us Gadgeteen, which is more than perfect, and we also have an Annie in our shop for later on, and we have the additional Pantheon 2-star that we could just play as a random 2-star unit. A lot of players do not know when to level up on stage 2-1 to go to level 4 or stay level 3. So you typically want to go up to level 4 if you can actually win some games. And how do you know if you're going to win some games? So first things first, you have unit upgrades. We had 3 unit upgrades, so this is a no-brainer. We're probably going to win all 5 of the early round stages unless someone gets something completely nuts later on. Next, you want to look at your items. So if you have a buildable item, that's another sign to go for sort of like a win streak start, even if it's not like a perfect item. For example, in Spellslingers, a lot of people prefer the Spear of Shojin or a Static Shiv with a tier. We had a blue buff or a redemption that we could have built this round, because we could have either done tier plus belt, which builds redemption, or the double tier, which builds the blue buff. Blue buff, while not the perfect item for Spellslingers, it's a very, very good one, and it's actually better in the early game and mid game compared to Spear of Shojin. The reason for that is Sona, which is a great item holder for blue buff, is very, very powerful in stages 2 and 3, and she just uses that item better than she does Spear of Shojin. So even if, let's say, a Nico doesn't use blue buff as well, or a Twisted Fate who doesn't even use blue buff at all, don't really like that item, it's perfectly fine because you save a lot of health in the mid game. So a lot of players, they're afraid of slamming suboptimal items, or like not perfect items, or not best in slot items, as some people call them. And you just really shouldn't have that fear. You should just build items early, especially if you're trying to win streak, because we met 2 of the 3 conditions that I kind of like to play for when I am win streaking. The last condition you need to meet, or like would like to meet, is having a good augment for win streaking. So that normally means it's going to be some sort of combat augment. So there are approximately 2 types of augments in TFT. They're like combat augments, or there are econ augments. There's some that are kind of in between. But an econ augment would be something like Rich Get Richer that gives you a bunch of gold at the start of the game. And there are many variations of sort of scaling augments, stuff that doesn't necessarily give you power now, but give you power later. That's the simplest example. An example of a combat augment would be something that gives your board immediate strength, such as what we got here. Spellslinger Crest gives us an additional trait and an additional item. Jeweled Lotus, which was one of our other options at the start, is also another example of a combat augment because it gives our team critical strike on spells, which makes our team immediately stronger. So we popped the item armory here, and what do we want? We have a tier and a belt that we can make an item out of, so we want something that contributes to our Spellslinger comp. So you could look at a tier list, you could look at mine, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and you see right now that we could build something like a Static Shiv, we could build a Warmogs. There are many other different options because not every item is going to be listed here. But generally, when you think about TFT, teams need a couple of things. So one thing is going to be penetration. So this is going to be armor penetration or magic penetration. Since we're playing an ability-based comp that deals magic damage, we're going to need magic penetration eventually in our game. So that is one reason to build the static shiv. Another thing we could do is see that we have 2 damage items right now. We have the Spellslinger Crest and the blue buff, and we have no tank items. So if you went for a tank item there, that would have been perfectly fine too. There was a chain vest available in the armory, so we easily could have gone for a Sunfire Cape, which is a perfectly fine item. I'll be honest, a lot of those choices right now were already very, very good, so we didn't really need to pick and choose that much. Now, for the regular viewers of the channel, all of you know that I always stress build a mix of defense and offensive items, and that is a very popular thing to do in TFT, and it's what you should do in most of your games. So you may be wondering, since I have 2 damage items that I listed out before, the blue buff and the Spellslinger Crest, why on earth would I build another damage item in the static shiv? Well, the easiest answer to that is Spellslinger Crest is actually an item for Echo in this comp. He is probably the best user for it, and I actually list out the best spatula holders on the meta snapshot now, so you all can take a look at that when you're like really researching your games later on. So we actually have 1 tank item and 1 damage items instead of 2 damage items. So whenever that's the case, you could kind of go in either direction. We also got really lucky this game, and you have to recognize which games you get lucky in. We got a Twisted Fate on stage 3. So this is going to be very, very powerful, and even though we have a Lulu 2-star, typically 1-cost 2 stars are pretty much on the same level as a 4-cost 1-star, at least in the early game, unless they're very pivotal to your comp. And in this case, Twisted Fate is very pivotal to our comp, and he has a static shiv, and we could transfer the blue buff onto Sona, which we talked about before. So there are a lot of reasons that we could just increase the straight raw power to our team by selling our Lulu 2-star, even though we lose the Gadgettine buff. So one mistake we made already here is, notice how we have 5 Spellslingers on the left. So in a lot of these games, I wasn't playing full attention. I wasn't trying super hard because I was playing in a rating that I am much higher than. But you probably should have played 2 Sonas here. You should have played Sona over the Lux, or even the Rel over the Lux. I know some people are going to be nitpicky about that, so I'll try to point those out when I can. This augment selection was pretty simple. It's just Luden's Echo. You have a blue buff, you're a spellcaster comp already, you have magic penetration. Luden's Echo does magic damage. You don't really need to re-roll that, even though I've seen some people re-roll that augment many times because the data says it's bad. This might be more of a mistake between players in, let's say, gold through master, relying too much on data rather than just playing the game. And it's not really an issue that happens that much in iron because typically people in iron do not even look at data, which is perfectly fine too. But I do want to point that out as well because I know some people are going to watch every single game, even if they are higher rated. So let's take a look at our board state right now. We have a lot of 1-star units. However, we are at 100 health. Typically, when you have 1-star units and you have a lot of pairs, right now we have 3 pairs. We have a Twisted Fate pair, a Sona pair, and an Annie pair. Whenever that happens, you typically want to roll. Some people watch other players play and they wonder why they always hit stuff whenever they roll down. And when they roll down, they wonder why they don't hit stuff. And they're like, hey, am I just getting unlucky? Or is the other player getting lucky? Or am I playing wrong? So a lot of times it's because people are playing wrong and people roll when they don't have pairs. But we'll go more in depth on this topic later on. When you're in iron, you don't really need to do that much. You just need to try to play as strong as a board as possible every single round without spending too much gold. So typically, I'd recommend just following some sort of leveling pattern. Also, on this carousel, we ended up going for the chain vest. We're going to build the Sunfire Cape that we talked about before. And one rule that I found helpful when learning the game is notice how we had 4 item components on our bench right now. We have a belt, chain vest, glove, and a bow. Whenever that happens, you always want to build an item. Never have more than 3 components on your bench, because I see a lot of players, they're just starting out in the game and they have like 10 items on their bench or like 6 items on their bench. And even if you don't know what the best items are, you still should try to build some items. So of course you could look at the meta snapshot that we talked about before. That's going to have a lot of item recommendations because we have more than just the picture there. We have some section at the bottom which lists out like 10 items for every champion approximately. So you could always choose from those options, or just try to build anything that fits your board. You always have to use your brain a little bit. So what we could have built instead of the Sunfire Cape, let's say you didn't know that that was a good item, you could have built a ZZ Rot portal, which is belt plus bow, Or you could have built a guard breaker, which is a glove plus the belt, because that's a great damage item you could put on your backline. I do think the Sunfire Cape is the best item in this situation. However, I'd rather get any item than have no items trying to think about what the best item is. So the reason why is because health total is a very important resource in TFT, and the more health you have, the more risk you could take later on and the greedier you can play. Right now we're at 100 health, so we could play super greedy. Pretty much the longer an item sits on your bench, which is this little area on the left next to your board, the less value you're going to get from them, because if you can use your item in more rounds, that's going to get you more value than using your items in less rounds. I know that sounds very simple, but that's pretty much the basics of it. Pretty much you always want to try to build as many items as possible because it gives your board a lot of power. Here we're going to build the guard breaker that we talked about before, and that's just going to give us another damage item that's just great for our team. You could put it on either Nico or Sona, or even the Twisted Fate. Any of the three options would work here. Think of it like a car. You could buy a car and then just let it sit in a garage somewhere, and it loses value every year that goes by, and like, let's say you're not using it. But if you use it, you get some utility out of it, right? You get to go drive and go some places. But if you just buy a car and let it sit, it's going to depreciate, and that's kind of like how you could treat items, because the longer they sit on your bench, like this person here, he has 5 items on his bench, the less value he's going to get out of them. He's going to miss out on like 1 or 2 rounds of losing more health, and it's just suboptimal to kind of do that. There are obviously exceptions to the rule, but these are just guidelines. So on this augment selection here, I'm going to take easy being green. Category 5 is very fun and it's very good, but easy being green, we have a Nico pair already, so it's just going to give us a lot more options. We're going to have a Twisted Fate and Nico pair, so if we get easy being green, which is the middle augment, we're just going to have a very easy time rolling down. Of course, you still could take category 5, and I'm actually going to end up doing that here, but if I was playing for serious, easy being green is a much better choice because it gives you a lot more options on the roll down. However, if you're a player in Iron, you're probably just starting out with a game and you want to have some fun, and playing the legendary units, that's going to be a lot more fun, at least for me. So you could just go category 5 here and just play around your legendary units instead of everything else. And the great thing about game ranking systems, especially for online games, is that you generally face people around your same skill level. So other people are going to be doing the same exact decisions as you, or very similar ones. So you're not really going to get too punished if you go for something that's more fun, because at the end of the day, why do we even play TFT? Is it to have fun? Is it to go pro? Well, I can't answer that for you. That's going to have to come from yourself. There's also the third option between that, which is, hey, I just want to hit this rank. It could be any rank. It could be silver, gold, platinum, diamond, grandmaster, or challenger, and hitting that will give someone some sense of accomplishment, which is another valid option. So you have to look deep down inside and like decide why you're playing TFT. Are you playing it to purely have fun, in which case you should just do whatever you feel like doing? Are you trying to go pro? And to do that, you should be playing with the purpose of getting better, or are you just trying to hit a certain rank and then call it quits after that, or just like kind of chill, wait for the next set after you do that? To do that, you kind of like mix the two approaches. So always, like, whenever you're starting out with a game, like, just have fun at first. Like, if you like the game, like, definitely play more of it. If you don't like the game, play less of it. It's not really rocket science, you know? Also, you could just do whatever you feel like doing on that particular day. Let's get back to the game though, because I know we need to focus more on that. I've been talking more of a lot more general TFT knowledge so far. So we have a bow and a Negatron cloak. We have a lot of offensive items right now, so I probably want a defense item here, but you may notice we're kind of last pick on this carousel. Carousel works in that the lower health you are, the earlier you pick, so it's kind of like a small comeback mechanic for players who are kind of struggling that game. But generally here you want a tank item because we have a lot of damage items already, but because we want to play around our legendary unit, that's probably what other players are going to do as well. We're going to go for the sword and just build a third damage item for our Janna. So she's going to have the blue buff for mana, she's going to have the guard breaker for damage, and now she's going to get a giant slayer for damage. So these are all like semi-decent items. They're not the best items, but they're all definitely playable. There's going to be a distinction between like best in slot items, playable items, and bad items. And it's perfectly fine to just have playable items. It might not be as cool. You might not be able to get like tons of views on YouTube with like just having playable items, but just having items on a champion, again, it's kind of like the car analogy that we were talking about earlier. You just get more value from your items right now rather than just letting your car sit in the parking lot and not using it. And you all saw in the last fight, even with non-perfect items, Arjana was still slapping pretty hard with that tornado, just because having items on a champion or a legendary unit with their carry augment is pretty much going to do well with almost any items. You just need anything that's like remotely usable, and that'll be perfect enough. This also brings me to my next point, which is you don't need to win every single game. The way to rank up in Teamfight Tactics is to just go top 4 in the majority of your games, and obviously winning gives you even more rating points than getting 4th place, for example, but all in all, you just need to maximize your average placements in every single one of your games. That's the primary goal if you want to climb. If you do want to maximize wins instead of just average placements, then yeah, getting perfect items every single time is going to help you win a little bit more, but you might not be at the highest rank that you could be despite all that. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you're just gonna have to trust me on that. Essentially, another thing that just slamming items does, or like building items very quickly, that's another way people kind of say it, is you're gonna get much higher average placements because you're gonna have a lot more health in every single one of these games because you did not greed your items. You got so much value out of them, you played extra items for extra turns, and that's really gonna help preserve your life total. You can kind of take a look at this graph here where the green line is the path that you take, where the y-axis is like your power level and the x-axis is the amount of time that passes, or each round that passes. With the green one, you get a lot more value out of your items, but maybe the red one, you're weaker in the early game, but you're stronger later. Both are valid, and there are going to be situations where you want one over the other. However, I guess one way to think about it is trying to maximize the amount of area underneath those lines, and that's going to contribute to like the most value you get out of your items. So if you could get like 8 out of 10 value from like decent items versus like 0 out of 10 for like the first half of the game and then 10 out of 10 for the second half, obviously going 8 out of 10 the whole time is going to be better. However, sometimes you don't always have usable items, and if you sometimes build like the 3 out of 10 items, that could hinder you later on, even if you are technically getting more rounds of use out of them. So there's always a balance in TFT. You're going to find that with a lot of things, such as like the whole offense versus defensive items, defensive champions versus offensive champions, and then like there are also balancing of things with like your exact item build as well, because sometimes you don't want to stack all in one stat. Sometimes you want to mix it up a little bit, and we'll get more advanced or more detailed in this much later on in maybe like the next couple of games. So definitely stick around for that if that is something that interests you. But here we're just kind of chilling. We're still at 100 health, so we don't really need to do that much. We did reach level 9 because we didn't spend any gold all game. And typically you don't hit level 9 at around stage 5 too. It could happen sometimes, but generally it doesn't. But this game we're able to do it because we had such an amazing start, and no one could really stop us. So one way to get a lot of bonus gold in TFT is through streaking. We're on a 17 game win streak right now, and you get +3 extra gold every single round if you get more than 5 wins. So, or 5 wins in a row, that is. So we have like 17 wins in a row. So we got, what's 17 minus 5? Like 12 rounds of like turbo win streak gold. So we probably got like 36 or like 39 now bonus win streak gold, and even more than that because of a different mechanic we'll talk about later, just from winning all these rounds. So that allowed us to hit level 9 really easily, but you don't really need level 9 to win a lot of games or to even like do well in any game. Some team compositions really like level 9, other team compositions are like, whatever. And you're gonna have to know which one belongs to which. And of course, that's a more advanced topic, so we will cover it later. For now, if you are in Iron, just focus on getting 2 stars, saving your money to level up to level 8, and then using most of your gold at level 8. And also you might want to start thinking about using your gold with purpose. Some people, they just use their gold because, oh, it's like fun to press the roll button. It's like a gacha game or something like that. If there's like a notification pop up, people want to clear that notification, so they just roll whatever like extra money they have in the gacha game, and that's just gonna happen every single time. Unfortunately, sometimes you need to have some sort of self-control and not roll down all your gold for no reason, and do it only when it's an opportune time. So that's just gonna take experience to kind of develop, and that's really all there is to it. Of course, a lot of new players, they might not know which champions are good, which champions are bad. And in the beginning, I would say don't really focus on that too much. just try to mix and match synergies that you see on the left-hand side. So for this game, we went heavily into Spell Slingers. So I'm just going to play all the Spell Slinger units. It's a very linear way to play, and pretty much anyone can do it. Is your game going to play out exactly the same way my game did? Probably not, and most likely not, actually. But don't let that bother you from using this game as kind of like a baseline or starting point to kind of see like, oh, these champions fit in this comp, these champions fit in that comp. What do I play on this stage? What do I play on the next stage? When do I roll? When do I level up? All this can be very, very daunting, but I would say don't really worry about it too much. One easy principle to keep in mind is just that the more expensive the unit, the better on average it's going to be. So in the early game, you want to be playing the early game units, and in the late game, you want to be playing the late game units. So just try to kind of lean into that a little bit and then just kind of hope for the best. But this first game was on a fresh account, so we started from the bottom. We were in iron, I guess, and then we'll probably promote into bronze after this game because there's a lot of rapid rating gains whenever you like start a new account or like whenever you play your first games on any account, because that's just how matchmaking systems kind of work. And then over time, you'll kind of discover your natural rating, and then hopefully we can improve upon that there. But let's hop into game number 2, which is going to be our bronze game. And there we're going to expand deeper into the topics we already introduced. And then hopefully over time, you'll learn more and more and more and get better and better. But here we started off with a Negatron Cloak. One thing I forgot to mention before is whenever you're starting out the game and the first carousel pops up, you're mainly just going for an item. Don't really pay attention too much to the champion that's holding it. From this first orb, we get a bow, and then we get a Wukong and 2 Narcissus. So maybe we could play the Anima Squad comp, because we look on the left, we see the traits, Mascot and Anima Squad. That's pretty much what Narcissus is, and we have a 2-star Narcissus sitting in our shop. So we could buy that whenever we want and make decisions after that. You probably want to also pick up the Ashes, because Ash is just a pair of units. You always want pairs in TFT because it allows you to get upgrades much easier, and just look at that. You buy the pairs of units, and then hopefully you get the 2-star versions of them, which we got here. From the next orb, we get a Camille and 1 gold. I'm just going to sell the Camille so that we can buy the Ash, and then I should pick up the Pantheon there. So I sell the Wukong, pick up the Pantheons really quickly. And then here's where things get a little interesting, because we could do some sort of reroll game, because we have a lot of copies of Ash. We have 3 Ashes, so I just re-rolled the hero augment very aggressively for Ash's carry augment. We probably could have done the same thing for Narcissus as well, so either or could have happened there. And this game was actually really, really funny, as you'll see in a second. Also, last game we did a win streak start. Remember how I was saying like, oh, we met a lot of conditions for win streaking, and we met some of them here too. The thing is, reroll comps are a little bit different because they rely heavily on having a big economy. So what we're going to do instead is do a lose streak start. So we're going to try to lose every single game in stage 2, because we'll still get a lose streak bonus. We talked about streaks before, and you could get bonus gold from either win streaks or lose streaks. Obviously, win streaking is going to be better because you save a lot of your life total, but it's more difficult to do also because you can't just win every game. It's like telling a professional sports team to just say like, oh yeah, just win every game. And it's as easy as that. Obviously, in a lot of sports, the concept of lose streaking doesn't really exist, but you could kind of pretend saying like, oh, like let me rest up some of my star players, let me play some of the lesser known guys, or like develop the farm system a little bit, play some of the up and comers instead. And that's kind of like what lose streaking is. You're kind of just giving up the now and hoping that it helps you later. It's kind of like a lot of people in their 20s, they like to live it up. So they're going to be spending their entire paychecks. They're going to be going to like every single party, like drinking a lot, doing all of that, and hopefully like just live like very high energy lifestyle and try to like continue it on as long as possible, right? And sometimes that does work out for some people. Not the best analogy, but I would say that's something more geared towards like win streaking. But lose streaking would be something like, oh, let me like put more of my money into like my savings account or like an investment account. And then through that, maybe by the time I'm 30, I can start living large after that. It could kind of be seen like that. And like maybe you skip out on like happy hours every now and then, or like you don't go to the club or something or the bar every single weekend like some other people do. So maybe like your social life in the now takes a hit, but like your financial life, it's building up because we already collected interest last round and this round. And the more interest you get early on, the more interest you get later on because of the way like compounding works. Obviously in Teamfight Tactics, the compounding doesn't go that crazy, but the same concept still applies. By the way, this game is a little atypical because we have a lot of copies of our reroll unit, which is going to be Ash. So we're going to be going for an Ash 3-star, and to do that you need 3 2-star copies of her. Pretty much that means you need 9 copies of Ash, and we have 7 right now. We have 2 2-star Ashes, and we have 1 more in an orb sitting on our board. I guess now we have 8 because we saw another Ash in our shop. So we technically could go for a 3-star Ash right now. We could pick up the Ash from the orb and then use this champion duplicator that we got from the carousel in order to get a 3-star Ash. I'm gonna actually not do that though because I want to keep my lose streak for this entire stage. Now you might be wondering, why do I want to do that? Because I could just start a win streak right now. And you're definitely right, I could start a win streak right now. However, during the neutral rounds, which is going to be, remember how we face a lot of minions in stage 1, and then at the end of stage 2 we face the golems, and then at the end of stage 3 we face some wolves, and then like same thing at the end of every stage. Pretty much during that neutral round, or minion round as people like to call it, you actually double dip your streak bonus. So if you are on a win streak, you get an additional round of win streak. If you're on a lose streak, you get an additional round of lose streak. So it's just really, really good to keep your streak for the entirety of the stage. And you can see that by looking at the top of your screen. By the way, I just want to say this game is highly atypical because you normally don't get your 3-star version of your 1-cost unit this quickly. And we'll definitely go into another reroll game later just to show some of the differences between how lucky this game was versus a more typical game. But this is, again, like I did not cherry pick any of my games. This is just kind of what happened in my first games. And you might say that like, hey, like every game this guy's getting lucky or something like that. But if you really look at how every good player plays, you're going to notice a pattern. And that pattern is going to be, hey, why do they always have some sort of like good board? And the reason why is because they just see more of the openings. And sometimes, yes, luck does affect things. Like this game, we obviously got lucky. However, it's going to be really rare to be sort of in like a bad position because that's typically not something that better players fall into. I sometimes feel the same way whenever I watch people better than me, and I'm like, hey, how are they always in such a good position? And that's just because they see more things than I do. So it's always going to be relative to whatever rating you're currently at, but I know some people are going to say like, hey, oh my God, this person only got lucky in all these games, but it's really not true because like I do this video series every single set, and every single set, the same thing happens. Like I pretty much win every single game in the early stages at the lower ranks because you can think of it as like a major league player playing against like middle schoolers, you know? And then later on, once the ranks get higher, it's still like a major league player playing against high schoolers. Now, I'm not saying that I'm like the star player in the major leagues, but getting the high ranks isn't something that I'm like bragging about, like how some other players do, because it's just kind of like what's expected if I'm putting my full energy into the game. For example, if a star player is having a bad year, he's not going to say like, oh, but I'm still like in the major leagues or something like that. Like that's not something that he's kind of interested in. Because to them, it's not really like that big of an accomplishment. But let's go back into the game. We build the Last Whisper on the Ash, and we build the rune on Hurricane. Last Whisper is almost required in the build, and this is the same reason why we built Static Shiv before. And then here on this option, we take Portable Forge. I didn't really like the other options. I guess Ascension is like okay in this comp. And then Toma traits, it's kind of like a crapshoot. The only one we really want is Laser Core Crust, but it's kind of hard to get, at least from Atoma traits. However, Portable Forge, we wanted a tank item actually, but we didn't get a good one. We had Eternal Winter, which is okay, but it's not great. But it's still early-ish in the game, and this Ash is going to get a lot of kills. So let's go for the Gold Collector. 1, because it's fun. 2, because our Ash is really strong, and she's going to kill a ton of units like this, which should in turn give us a ton of gold. But essentially, since we took a big loss streak early, we want to start building a win streak back. We're like last place right now. We're 72 life. So this is a complete opposite of the previous game where we were at 100 life. But look at this collector. It's giving us a ton of gold already just because the Ash is very powerful at this point in the game. Normally, you don't get your 3-star 1-cost unit until maybe like late stage 3. If you get it like in the early parts of stage 3, such as before stage 3-3, I would consider that kind of like a lucky game. And while we didn't do it this game, there is a concept called slow rolling versus hyper rolling. And I go more into that in this video here, which you all can check out. But essentially what I'm wanting to explain is that if you do a hyper roll, sometimes you get your 3-star 1-cost unit on stage 3-1, and that's going to be very good, but you will have a lot less gold than we do have in this game here. But one other thing to keep in mind about this game in particular is that I do have an Ashe comp on the meta snapshot or the tier list, and you may notice this game, I'm not actually going to follow the same exact build that we go for in that image. So while I do recommend newer players to kind of stick to the pictures, and not really use their brain that much and just kind of just blindly follow the pictures. The reason why I say that sometimes, and I'm conflicting it now, is because there are two different ways to play, which we talked about before. There's playing to get better, and then there's playing to rank up. So if you're playing purely for like short-term ranking up, just follow the picture. But if you want to play and try to improve over time, you definitely have to try to start thinking outside the Xbox. So how do we do that? Well, you could develop what's called fundamental TFT skills. So it's a very wide-ranging term, and there's no like set definition for it as far as I know, but it's pretty much just like basic TFT knowledge. And one of them is going to be the concept of frontline, backline. So in this image here, we have our Ashe as our main backline unit, and then we have Blitzcrank and like Renekton as our 2 tanks. But since Blitzcrank and Renekton are both 1-cost units, and we don't really have that many copies of them, nor do we want to roll that much for them because we already have the Ashe 3-star, we don't need to play them, or we don't want to play them in the late game. So we need to think of something else in terms of tankiness or tank line to play in the late stages of the game, because this is going to be one of those times where you want to deviate from the picture. So what I want some people to do is maybe pause the video right now and think of some general comps that you could kind of play. And I'll actually leave a link to the team builder here, teamfight.lol/team-builder. And just build some Ashe comps there and try to think of who fits well in the front line and try to guess what we will kind of lean more towards in the late game. And there's no 100% right or wrong answer, because one very important thing I learned when I was getting better at TFT, I'm still trying to get better even now though, is the concept of playing what's in your shop. And a lot of players, they don't listen to that because they're very entitled. And the reason why they're entitled is because they say things like, hey, I'm the only person going for this unit. Everyone else is going for this other unit. I should be able to hit this unit because I'm uncontested. The concept of uncontested just means that no one else is playing the same comp as you, which theoretically makes it easier to hit. Well, not theoretically, it just does make it easier to hit. However, since this is a card game essentially, and there's a lot of chance in TFT, you can't always hit. That's just not a thing that's going to happen. The odds can be stacked in your favor, but there are going to be chances, even if it's like a 99% chance, there's still the 1% chance that you don't end up getting your way. So the way to deal with that randomness is playing what's in your shop. And every time you reroll, you still could, again, only buy the things in your shop. You can't force the exact champion you want to show up. And everyone's guilty of this. I'm guilty of it too. It happens to me all the time. Even the person I learned this from, they're guilty of being entitled and being like, hey, why didn't I hit? But one thing I want to point out is that I have Aatrox and Echo in my shop right now, and for some reason, I don't buy them because I'm kind of forcing a different frontline. I wanted to play the mech frontline this game because I thought it'd be cool, but going for those 2 champions, like they're all 4-cost tanks. 4-cost tanks are great in the late game, and they're very solid. A lot of teams are built around them, and for some reason, I just decide not to buy them because I'm forcing some other build, and that's a big mistake there. Obviously, I'm not super trying in this game, but if I was playing more seriously, I probably would have picked up those units and went for something else. But this game, I wanted to do a variation of the Sure Shot build with mech. So typically, they play stuff like Samira as the main carry. She's a Sure Shot. Ashe is also a Sure Shot. And then they play mech as a frontline. Mech is the Garen build. So they go like Garen, Wukong, plus Jax. And with the mech trait, they all combine into one giant unit. And it's pretty fun to play. For the augment here, if you're playing the mech build and you're forcing it, definitely do not take makeshift armor because you don't really get that much value out of it. Thrill the Hunt's decent. Axiom Arc's pretty good too. Thrill the Hunt's good because we don't have any healing on our team. But we rerolled. I probably should have just taken Thrill the Hunt, but I just wanted something like goofier, you know? But here, just take the component grab bag, call it a day. But back to the topic of like what to play for your front line. Other options other than the mech could be random Aegis units. So you could do like Echo plus Leona or something like that. You could do defenders. You could do the brawlers like we have here. Right now we have like 6 brawlers for some reason. You could also play random threat units. You could play like your Aatrox. You could play stuff like Riven. to complement the brawlers or the defenders depending on which way you're going. So there definitely are a lot of different options for frontliners. Later on in the game, you could play stuff like Fiddlesticks, and Fiddlesticks could definitely be another one of your tanks. By the way, this person, if you thought I got lucky and I hit Ash 3 really early, this person hit Jax 3-star in early stage 4. I don't even know how that is possible, but that is going to end our like comeback win streak right here, because one's a 3-cost 3-star. I have a 3-cost 1-star. One of them's definitely stronger than the other. So unfortunately, we take the loss here. We also did not build any of the items on our bench, so I committed one of the cardinal sins of having 4 item components on your bench, and that's going to cost me in the immediate term. Maybe in the long term, it'll help me out a little more, but in the short term, it's definitely hurting me a little bit. All good though. I'm going to do a bit of a roll down here. I should have rolled down last turn, but I took too long picking my augment, so I'm going to make up for lost time here. A lot of players, if they miss a roll down, let's say that I was supposed to roll on stage 4-1, or in this case, I was supposed to roll on stage 4-2. And because I missed it, I missed the time frame because I took too long to pick my augment. Some players will be like, hey, let me just save up the gold and roll at stage 5-1 or the next like interval, for example. That's a pretty big mistake. I would try not to do that because just because you missed a roll down and it's suboptimal, like looking back at the game from like a overall perspective to roll on stage 4-3, it doesn't mean it's like wrong to roll on stage 4-3. Sometimes you have to make up for your bad mistakes by doing something a little weird. And our team did not have a front line before because we made another mistake. We sold all the brawlers for no reason. I should have just kept the brawlers out and not rolled. But since I switched the Garen in, I wanted to roll because we have like Garen pair, we have Samira pair, and we have the Riven pair now. We have a lot of pairs on our bench. So whenever you have a bunch of very important pairs, you want to roll down to 2-star them. By the way, I'm going to try to go for a defensive item here because whenever you're playing mech, defensive items are the most important things ever. The reason why is because items are kind of like a multiplier, and mechs combine 3 units into 1 unit, so you pretty much have a bigger base that you're multiplying. It's essentially multiplying by like 3 instead of multiplying by 1, or like the base of 1. So that, let's say the item is like a 1.1 multiplier. If you multiply 3 by 1.1, you're going to get a little more added to like your overall power level, just because of the way mech works and the whole combining thing works. But here we get a Samira too. We're going to try to build some Samira items, but we want the 3rd item on our Garen, so we're going to build the Protector's Vow on him. Just build any tank items on your mech, by the way. You just need that because, again, you want the immediate power spike. Another thing to do is put your mech kind of on the side of your board. I don't know if you noticed in this fight, but the Garen did not stun the Lux, and if I positioned him better, he would have stunned the Lux on the first hit, along with the second hit that he did just here. But it doesn't really matter. We do win that round anyways, but there are going to be other fights where that definitely does matter. But this is the bronze game after all. So in bronze, that's where some people start taking the game a little more seriously. I wouldn't say that people in bronze necessarily look at guides yet. They still might just look at like random fun things to do and go ahead and try it out. And if they're good at the game, they'll climb from iron to bronze. And if they didn't quite get the crux of the game yet, they'll like stay in iron or stay in bronze, and instead of moving on to silver, for example. But in my opinion, this is definitely still like an experimentation stage of TFT because you still could kind of do whatever you want here, and pretty much you're just trying to have fun with it because, again, like we're playing a game, right? Like you always want to try to like at least have some fun in life, right? And especially when playing a game, like if you're not having fun, like what are you doing, you know? One of my close college friends, actually, he was silver in League of Legends at the time in sophomore year of college, and he's told me he wanted to go pro in League of Legends. Everyone was laughing at him, including me, because it's like kind of silly, right? It's like you're really far off. And he had already been playing like 200 games of League of Legends at the time. It was essentially his first year of playing. But then someone else was like, hey, you know, if you really put your mind to it, maybe you could do it. And I don't know if that's actually a good or bad thing. Sometimes people indulge in people's delusions, and some people are just more realistic about it. I'm not really sure. Like, it probably depends on the situation on whether that's correct or not. But essentially, like, when you are in the lower rank, you really have to look and reflect and try to see how you can improve if you want to, or just have fun with it. For me, in League of Legends, I'm just like a hard-stuck platinum player my entire life, and then I finally hit diamond one year, and I was pretty happy about that. But I knew I wasn't going pro in League, so I just played League to have fun and try to get to diamond. But my friend, on the other hand, he really wanted to go pro in League of Legends, and he pretty much sacrificed his entire like college career to kind of do that. He would like skip every class, and he ended up being like a 6-year graduate, which for some people that's fine. For him, he definitely should not have done that because he easily could have done it in 4 years, maybe even like 3.5. But he wanted to try to go pro in League, and he eventually became like a hard stuck platinum player like me. And then now, this is like 10 years later, he's like back to silver again. So yeah, you really got to decide, or you don't have to decide, but like if you do want to truly become like pro at TFT and you're at this rating right now, you really have to do something like drastic to improve a lot faster, and probably don't like grief your entire like career prospects due to it either. That would probably be a good thing to do. But let's get back to the game. So we have our front line finally. We have our 2-star Garen, and you may have noticed like ever since we got the 2-star Garen, because we made a mistake before, we kind of lost the momentum we had in the game, but we're pretty much back now. So what's going to be interesting is whether we are going to beat that Jax 3-star player. He's the person in first place right now, I believe, and he has not dropped around because Jax 3-star in stage 4 is very, very, very powerful. So I would identify this game as one of those where we got lucky, but someone else got luckier. So we have to decide whether we want to secure our second place or go for first place despite him being luckier. And then once we decide that, we have to determine possible courses of action to try to achieve that goal. So one way to do it at this point in the game, since we have 90 gold and we're level 8 already, is maybe we go to level 9 and see what we hit there. Another way to beat him is maybe we want a 3-star 4 cost. Maybe we want like a 3-star Garen, a 3-star Samira, and use that to beat him instead, because this Jax is an absolute monster right now. Then there's also the other option of just playing for second place, which is perfectly valid. If I was playing on my real account, maybe that's the best course of action here. But since I am in a lower rating, I'm going to be like, hey, let me see what I can do to win. So I'm going to try to play into that. So to do that, we probably want some sort of secondary carry because Ashe is going to kind of fall off in the later game. So let's get some damage items. Maybe Fiddlesticks is going to be our secondary carry. Maybe I could have went all in on the Samira. What we really want is something like a Giant Slayer because that's really good against brawlers, but we don't really get that option here. So this is pretty interesting. Obsidian Cleaver, Random Sanctum, Mana Zane. Unfortunately, none of these are really that great. I think we end up going Mana Zane on the Samira, but yeah, this is not what you want to see. We wanted to see something like Blitz Hook. We wanted to see something like maybe Trinity Force, Zonia's Paradox. There are probably other ones that I'm missing off the top of my head, but let's level up to level 9, just add in an extra Urgot. Maybe Urgot farms us some items. That's another thing that you could kind of use in the late game because you're like, hey, let me play for the super late game, get this Urgot to farm me even more gold, and then just get more items that way. By the way, BunnyMuffins tip of the day. I'm going to do it earlier, I guess, because we just saw it in action. Whenever you see a portable forge or like the Ornn item anvil, always put a unit in the corner if you don't have time to scout. You saw in this round, we had our Urgot hooked and not our Ashe. And that's just because a lot of people take hooks whenever that happens, and you just want to watch out for it. Let's go back to the game though. Right now, there are a lot of players still in it. So there are 5 players. We're on stage 5-6, so we probably don't want to roll down all our gold quite yet. We definitely need something a little more powerful. Luckily, the Jax player has 0 gold, so he's not really going to get that much stronger, which is definitely really good news for us. We could find maybe some 2-star legendaries. Maybe like a full 2-star legendary team might be enough to beat him. Maybe this person gets stuck on our Garen like right now, and this really highlights the lack of magic penetration. Remember how I always stress in the first game, we needed the static shiv for magic penetration, and now in this game, we have the last whisper for armor penetration. That Jax player definitely needs some magic pen, and that's just sorely lacking from his team right now, and that definitely helped us win this round. But essentially after that, I realized, hey, winning this game is definitely in the cards, even without anything crazy, so maybe let's just roll down for some 2-star legendaries and cap out our board that way. I'll actually try to introduce some of like the terms that a lot of players use. By the way, this is another Ornn anvil, so it could be annoying. Always put units in the corner to get the baits, but people use the term cap out your board as in just like go for the biggest late game board you can possibly get. That's pretty much what capped out means. So some boards don't cap out that high, some boards cap out very high, and legendary boards typically cap out like an average amount because it's not like a 3-star 4 cost, it's not like a a very specific synergy that just works out really well. It's kind of like the in-between, just the default late game board that a lot of people play. You just roll down at level 9 with like 80 gold or something like that, and you just buy all the yellow units. So maybe I buy the Nunu and Mordekaiser here and just like roll down, kind of do that. I decide not to because I'm playing a very specific mech build and we have items specifically tailored to the mech. And maybe I kind of don't want to sell my Ashe, even though maybe I should. Actually, no, the Ashe is kind of doing work still. So yeah, maybe keep the Ashe. But pretty much you want to find something that's really good against the person you're going to face off with at the very end of the game, which in this case is a brawler player. So I'm pretty much looking for like % max health damage. So that's going to be either a Sunfire Cape, Morello Namicon, or a Giant Slayer. And I'm really going to try to gear my builds towards that. Urgot is also pretty good against that too. Same with Leona. So hopefully I get another copy of Leona that I can play, and the Urgot 2-star, which we actually end up getting right now. So I'm going to replace either the Sivir or the Ezreal around that. So we are not in a 1v1 scenario yet, but I do see who I'm facing. I am facing the brawler player, as you could see with the whole like sword icon on the right hand side. But eventually I want to get another mech unit because I want to get my Leona back in action, because Leona is great at dealing with high health targets because she does a ton of damage to tanks, and that's pretty much what this player is. So right now Leona is getting eaten by the mech, and I don't want that to happen. So I need to find either another Leona, maybe a Jax or a Garen, in order to avoid that situation. We don't want to play for Draven because Draven is an ace unit, and we're playing Samira as an ace unit right now. And aces only work when you have 1 or 4 of the trait, and that's like the unique thing about them. So definitely don't want to cancel out the trait by only having 2 aces. I think it's kind of cool. I didn't really notice it until maybe like a month ago, even though the ace trait's been around for a while, that it's the whole concept of like having 4 aces, which is obviously pretty cool. But like whenever I read TFT traits, I just think of whether they're good or not, what comps they fit in, and leave it at that. I don't really think of like, oh, like that's pretty thematic or something like that. Maybe I should though, because that's like a little bit more fun. But there's a Leona that we can see. I'm probably going to drop the Ezreal or the Echo for this, just so I could get the 2-star Leona back in action. So I'm probably thinking of who to replace right now. Definitely build the Runons on Urgot. He's really the only person that can use that item right now because he's 2-starred. Ezreal's 1-star. So I really should just sell this Ezreal, put the Death Dance on Leona, on my 2-star Leona that is, and then play this extra Leona instead of the Ezreal. You don't really need Sure Shot trait. It's kind of like a fake trait, and we already have 2 of them. Like 3 Sure Shot, obviously it's like still fine to play. Like I'm not saying it's like a bad thing to play, but you don't really need it if you need like the effect of a unit more than the effect of the trait. That's another thing that you kind of need to pay attention to whenever you're in like 1v1 scenarios. Sometimes you need to drop traits even though they carried you throughout the entirety of the game, because you need something a little more tailored to your specific opponent. So getting a Leona activated against this person is going to be very, very powerful. And getting the whole like Sure Shot bonus, while it's still good, it's not anything like game breaking. But here, let's just get the extra Leona. Maybe we have 2 2-star Leonas. Also, the Aegis is not bad because Jax does magic damage. I finally do sell this Ezreal though. Let's put the Leona close to the Garen so that the big Leona doesn't get eaten. Put the Death Dance on her, put this Aegis emblem, I don't know, just put it on someone random, the Urgot for now. And let's roll down. We could get a lot of cool stuff right now. Fiddle Tool would be probably pretty good. We got him right there, perfect. We have the Morello on him, so that's perfect. Gonna deal a lot of damage to all these brawler players because Morello, it burns based on their max HP, and brawlers have a lot of max HP, so it's just something that you really want. I guess he's mech, he's not really brawler, but the same concept still applies. Like this Jax has a ton of like health, and Fiddlesticks or anyone with like % health damage is going to do really, really, really well against them. Unfortunately, wait, our Garen actually lived? I thought he died and then he like kind of healed back up. That was kind of weird. Maybe I was looking at something else though, but the Fiddlesticks probably goes off. He also reduces the healing from the Bloodthirster. So here's where I'm like, okay, the game's actually like pretty set and we're actually super chilling right now. But this Leona, is she going to pop off? Kind of. Look at the damage on the right. Like Leona actually outdamaged Fiddlesticks and like the Samira and stuff, which is pretty crazy, right? That's how good Leona is against some of these boards. Plus you have the added bonus of like her being like generally decently tanky also. Do we sell this Samira? I think we probably should. Maybe I should sell her, put the Gunblade on the Leona, do like double healing item, and then put the Manazane on the Urgot maybe for fun, and then like screw it, Infinity Edge the the Leona also, but I end up not doing it, or I actually played the Ezreal instead. But I think it would have been cooler or more fun on the Leona, just because I don't know, she's kind of cool, you know. You don't really get to see Leona shine that often, and this is definitely one of the comps where it's like pretty decent against. Unfortunately, she kind of is about to get eaten up here, but Garen should be able to finish this off. And again, this is really important again because this person did not have any magic resistance penetration, and we have a Dragon Claw on a 2-star mech'd up Garen. And that's going to cause him to deal like almost no damage. Like look at the damage chart on the right. Jax is not enough for that. But that's game 2. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. Let me go into game number 3, which is going to be the silver game. This game ended up being very interesting because I accidentally picked the wrong augment when the game started, and you'll see that in just a moment. So here we go for a Chain Vest. Augments are super important right now, and they are apparently going to be a permanent part of TFT. And in set 8.5 and set 8, they made hero augments like kind of the main set mechanic. We get some nice defensive items here. We have a Chain Vest and a Negatron Cloak, and then we get a sword, so we have some offense to mix in as well. And then here we get a Blitzcrank too, so we're off to a pretty good start already. We get a LeBlanc there, so we could already think about going for maybe some admin comp because we have LeBlanc plus Blitzcrank. But here, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to re-roll a bit. Bigger, better Buckler, Petricite Chains, Foster Growth. They don't really help us right now because we have a 2-star Blitzcrank, and we did not get a Brawler. We did not get anything interesting like that. It looks like one other person's going to take the Poppy augment. Poppy is a really good augment, but we just don't have the time to take that right now. And then here, I thought this Lux augment was actually the support augment, but it turns out it was the carry one. So I made a big boo-boo here because I just took it because I'm like, hey, I have a LeBlanc, we could go for Spell Slingers, and we get a Lux 2 from the Orb. And then here, I probably should have taken team-wide mana, but I was thinking since we have the 1-star support augment, I want to go for a permanent HP just to stack Lux up because we're going to be playing her the whole game. And I also make the mistake of leveling up, and I was too slow to put the Renekton in. However, it was this moment I realized that I did not have the Lux support augment, I had her carry augment instead. And you guys saw the Ashe game. The way you want to play 1-cost reroll is staying low level, and we already leveled up. So what are we supposed to do from here? Well, you could do one of two things. You could still reroll the comp, or just use it as a win streak. Use this carry augment as like a win streaking augment. Honestly, this is not the best win streaking augment, but it still kind of helps you play around with the game, and we did get a free 2-star from it. Luckily, at this point in the game, we don't need to make too many decisions. We just need to figure out a board to play. So we drop in Renekton for Brawlers, and then we're going to build the Stone Plate on Blitzcrank. Gargoyle Stone Plate is really good when you have a lot of units attacking that particular unit, which is why we solo frontline our Blitzcrank. You don't have to do that, but it's like a small optimization that you could start adding to your game. So what items do we want for Lux? We could either go for a mana build, get her to cast a lot, because the way her hero augment works is whenever she casts, or her second cast is going to deal a bunch of bonus damage, so you want her to cast pretty often. So we could build a Spear of Shojin to activate that, or play into the Star Guardian trait in order to get bonus mana. So both builds work, you could even combine them, and that's pretty much what we're going to try to do this game. Do keep in mind that is if and only if I'm actually playing Lux, but since we get an additional copy of Lux in the shop, that's when I'm considering, hey, maybe we could still reroll for the Lux even though we made a mistake before. So if you did not check out the rerolling video yet, or like any of my leveling guides, you would know that you typically don't level up when you play for the reroll, but again, sometimes if you make a mistake, you could still kind of make up for it, which you'll see in this game right here. Obviously, don't force it. If we got 0 copies of Luxes, then we can't really do the build anymore. But since we did get 1 copy, we could still think about it. We are last pick. We wanted to get a tier, but none of them are left, so we'll just get the Rod and the Belt, because Rod could be used for Lux, and Belt is just decent for any tank item. This next shop here really confirms our belief that we will be re-rolling Lux, because now we have 6 copies of her. So if we did not get this, we just simply would not play her and then just forget about the hero augment. But since we do see this happening, we can go ahead and go for it. I wanted to actually level up here and play Nyla, just because Nyla's a good unit and she's also a Star Guardian. However, because we want to stay at a low level to reroll, we're actually not going to try to win streak this stage. So normally you would try to do it, But in this situation, getting Lux 3-star is way too important, so we're just going to give up our streak. I know that's kind of contradictory to our last 2 games where we really wanted to win streak or we really wanted to lose streak. But in this game, we won the first 3 rounds, so we can't just lose streak magically, you know? And we also can't force the win streak because we can't level up. So just chill, play for the later parts of the game, and you're going to be fine right there. You may be wondering why it was so easy to hit the Ashe 3-star and now the Lux 3-star in this game. And the reason why in these 2 specific games it might be easier than when you play it is because we are in a 1-1-1 hero augment game in both of them. So the only choices for hero augments on stage 2-1 in these 2 games, they were only 1-cost heroes. So other people are going to be re-rolling for the 1-cost along with me, or just playing a lot of 1-costs in general because they want to just use them for their team. And if it's like a 1-2-2 or even a 1-1-2, there are going to be a lot fewer 1-cost re-rollers. So the way the pools work is the more of the same cost champion that are bought out by your opponents, the easier it is, or the more often the other 1-cost champions show up in your shop. So since no one else is going for Lux, it's going to be a tiny bit easier to hit our Luxes. Obviously, in this game, this is still very lucky what we're seeing here. And I will put up a disclaimer that this is not typical results, but you might be wondering, what would I do if I didn't get this? Well, I might just play into other stuff instead. I'd play for maybe like the Kaisa or something like that, or maybe just play regular spell slingers like we saw before. Lots of different options you could see, and you have to, whenever you watch games, you could say, yeah, like this person got lucky, but players that are going to be better than you always have other options that they're considering. Also, here I make a slight mistake. I should have just used the champion duplicator on my Lux. I don't know why I didn't, but it just should have happened, because just getting the Lux 3-star right away early, it's going to give me a lot of power and potentially save me a lot of life. But maybe I scouted beforehand. I don't actually remember what I did, and maybe I saw that, oh, my matchups were fine, so I did not need to use that consumable yet. Now we're on to the augment stage, and a couple of different options we could take here. So Luden's Echo, we could have taken that like in the other Spellslinger game, but Axiom Arc's a bit better because remember how I said we want to do some sort of mana build with her? So we could do that with either Star Guardians, like you see what I did here, or we could do it with something like a Spear of Shojin. Typically, you only want to play Luden's Echo if you already have some mana items, and since we do not have any, it's just not going to be that great right now. Axiom Arc's pretty good. It's not the best, but it works really well with the Star Guardian trait, so we're just going to take that. Star Guardians gain bonus mana, and Axiom Arc gives you mana, so anything that gives mana is pretty good for Star Guardians. So we make up for our mistake from last round. We 3-star our Lux, put in the 4 Star Guardians, and we're pretty much chilling from here. We are facing off against a Ashe reroller, but for some reason the items are looking a little funky for that Ashe. No worries, also only 1-star Ashe, so a little unlucky for this player. But maybe that is one of those signs that kind of give up on the reroll, which I don't know if they're actually doing quite yet. I guess we'll find out later. This next shop, we don't really have to do too much, just buy the Nyla and chill. I guess you could buy the Sona also. We probably will not be playing the Sona, even though she is a spell slinger, because we're probably leaning more into the Star Guardian variation, as we talked about before, just because we need mana, and we don't have a Spear of Shojin, we don't have a blue buff for our Lux, so we really need to rely on the traits to kind of make up for that lack of mana regeneration. So a lot of carries in this game, like your main damage dealer, whether they be an attack speed carry or a magic carry, they generally need 3 or 4 things. One of them is being power, so that could be ability power, attack damage, things like that. It could also be frequency, so attack speed or mana regeneration, I would say is like the frequency aspect. And then lastly, there's going to be healing and critical strike. So critical strike is like a multiplier. It works for both of them pretty well. That's just Jeweled Gauntlet or Infinity Edge. Some champions need it, some champions don't. It really just depends if they are reliant on their spell for damage. Lux is, so we're going to build it on her. And then healing is semi-optional. Sometimes you need it. The melee champions, melee carries typically need it a little bit more than the backline carries, but backline carries could use items like Hextech Gunblade or Bloodthirster pretty decently, especially if you're in a set where there's a lot of AoE damage or area of effect damage that hits kind of like the entire board, and then they heal back up and you're not too worried about them. Also good in like assassin meta, so whenever there are champions that jump to the back, in this case there are some hackers in the game, not in this specific game, but in other games there's a hacker trait which jumps a unit to the back line. Healing could give you a small bump there. We have an interesting shop here. We just get a Kaisa 2 and a Sona 2. Do we even need them? Like, it's kind of hard to play them over other stuff. We definitely should. So I think we take out the Blitzcrank and play the Sona and the Annie, maybe? Do we want the Annie? Maybe Blitzcrank's better than the Annie. Our tanks are so weak right now, so we definitely need like a 2-star tank. It's always bad to sell your 2 stars. It's a pretty common mistake that people make. They're like, oh, I have this thing that fits a nice synergy that I have, so let me sell my only 2-star or my only tank in order to make room for them. And that can often be a mistake. In a lot of times, or in a lot of cases, the 2-star unit, even if it doesn't have a synergy, can often or sometimes be better than just playing the extra synergy. Also, you have to take note of what items you have. Blitzcrank has the Gargoyle Stone Plate. I wouldn't say it's his very best item, but it definitely is one of his better ones, whereas Annie could use it, but isn't that great with it, and Annie's main tankiness comes from the Ox-Force trait, and she just doesn't have that trait active. So let's level up here. You typically level up to level 7 at stage 4-1, pretty much regardless of what comp you play. It's like, unless you're playing 1-cost reroll, you're almost always level 7 at this point in the game. Wow, we are facing off against a mascot player with a 3-star Malphite. It's actually a little scary, but not really, because look at his bench. Lots of items on the bench, which means not a lot of value coming out of those items, whereas we've built all our items. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 built items. He only has 2, I believe. So we just have a pretty easy power spike over this other player, which obviously is really nice for us. Player even had an item augment, and they're pretty much not using it. So speaking of augments, we have a couple options here. Phony Frontline, Makeshift, and Second Wind. Those were like mediocre options. I wanted something a little spicier, and since it's the last stage of augments, you could afford to reroll, and we're gonna go for the Portable Forge here. I probably should have gotten the other one. I was just like hoping for Mana Zane because I was just trying to have some fun, but I probably should have gotten the Spellslinger one because that is very good in this build. The reason why Spellslinger has to be the better option here is because all these trait augments, they only work for a certain number of comps, right? Or pretty much only one comp. Whereas Portable Forge, it kind of fits in everything. So by default, the way they balance the game, they're going to put more power into the trait augments because they are more situational. So I really should have just gotten that one, but I kind of just wanted to have some fun because I wanted to see the effect of Mana Zane in this build with the Star Guardian comp, and luckily we were able to get the Mana Zane because you don't always get it. I guess what I'm trying to say here is you could still have fun and still win at certain ratings. It's not really until you get like super high up that you have to play super optimally every single time. Like that's just not something you need to do. Even in like Challenger, you could get to Challenger playing suboptimally for sure, because there are a lot of mistakes that people make there. And for example, there are some players who like to only play one team composition. And they get into the game, they want to do the same exact thing every single time, and people get to Challenger like that. I've seen people in like top 100 like that too. You really don't need to do everything super perfectly because as it turns out, a lot of players in TFT make a ton of mistakes, and that just means that there's a lot of room to improve for like every human player out there. Actually, I don't even know that if there's like a robot that plays TFT yet, but maybe eventually there could be. Let's get a tank item here though, because we have all our damage items taken care of. Unluckily, those got taken, so I think we have to go for the Twisted Fate here. Building a TFT robot is actually incredibly difficult though. I don't think that it's actually that possible, but I've explained this before. Also, I opt to build the Shroud of Stillness here over the Sunfire Cape because I'm pretty sure Lux just kills everything, so you just don't need the effect of the Sunfire Cape. Also, let's level up and roll down a bit. But if you really want to hear about why it's too difficult to have like a robot playing TFT, is because there are too many decisions to make for a robot specifically in TFT. If you compare it to chess, like yeah, there are many chess robots and they play much, much better than humans, even like 20 years ago. I think Kasparov lost to Deep Blue in, what was it, 1990 or something like that? So that's actually 30 years ago. The difference between chess and TFT, though, is that in chess, you typically have around 20 possible moves that the computer can analyze. But in TFT, you have to interact around your opponents. You have 5 champions in your shop. You could put them on any of 28 squares. You can do all sorts of combinations of those 28 squares. Also, for example, you could move your Lux where my Garen is. You could swap the Kaisa and the Nico. And the amount of combinations of like possible turns is just way too big for most computers. So doing it kind of like the brute force way might be a little difficult. Maybe there's a way to like train it and like give it more knowledge over time or something like that. Maybe that's like one possible way to do it. But to do it like the chess way, it probably would be too hard because the way the chess engines work, at least from what I understood from them from a long time ago is that they test out every move and then they have some sort of evaluation at the end of it. And that's how they figure out what the best moves are. But in TFT, there are just way too many possible moves per turn that it becomes a little bit tedious to kind of analyze for a robot. But we are approaching the late game right now. We're about to enter stage 5. We are going to use Garen as our main tank temporarily because we get the defender buff. But I think later on, we want to utilize Echo. The reason why is pretty simple. Echo is just a Star Guardian, so you just want to play him because we're going what's called vertical Star Guardian, which just means playing as many Star Guardians as possible. Some people talk about vertical versus horizontal comps. Vertical just means going deep into a trait. Horizontal is kind of going into shallow traits, but like going into like 10 of them or something like that. Getting a Fiddle here is pretty nice. We could replace a Sona. Fiddle's just solid late game unit. And then let's build some tank items. So Dragon Claw, good. Sunfire, like I guess we just have to build it because it's like you don't get any more item components after stage 5. So we just have to complete all our items, even though I was trash talking the Sunfire cape from before. I realized I made a slight mistake here. I think we could have built a Morellonomicon, and that's better anti-heal in the late game because you could put it on Fiddlesticks, whereas a Sunfire cape is better in the early game because both of those items, they kind of do the same thing. I just realized our Lux missed her spell on her first cast, which is kind of funny. A little annoying to deal with, and we do end up losing this round. Was it because of that, or was this player just like flat out stronger? That Aurelion Soul actually did a ton of damage despite being 1-starred. We get a Janna here. Janna probably would work out okay, but we're not really playing into Spell Slingers right now. But like, are we really going to pass up on this? That's actually tough to say. I end up swapping my team, so I put Janna in and sell the Garen, put the tank items on. Probably the Nyla right now because she's our 2-starred unit. It should be Nyla. Don't put it on Rel, please, man. Okay, thank God. Me, in hindsight, very good. So yeah, you just always want to itemize your 2-starred units. Uh-oh, Riven walked to the backline. That's definitely not good for us. We're facing another Aurelion Soul. Is everyone playing Aurelion Soul right now? I mean, he's good, but it's just kind of annoying for us. Luckily, we're able to win this round. Lux deals 3,000 damage AoE. Holy cow. That is very, very nice. It's weird how we beat the 1-star or the 2-star Aurelion Soul, but lost to the 1-star Aurelion. Sometimes it's the whole team that matters instead of just their primary carry. Augments and items make a huge difference too, especially augments. I've been talking about that all game, how like augments kind of decide almost everything that you do in TFT. By the way, I forgot to move a tank to the left-hand side. Don't make this mistake I made where, see how their Alistair walks right to my main carry, my Lux? You don't want that to happen. So to avoid that, you just put 2 tanks in the front line and spread them out a little bit. For some reason, I have them both on the left, and since I was kind of AFK while playing this game, I believe I was playing like Cookie Run Kingdom on my second monitor or something like that. After I do like a 10-second turn, I just forget about all the other stuff. Another important thing to note is that I am saving my gold. We have like 90 gold right now. I do want to hit level 9 just because that's going to be what our super late game is going to be about. So probably going to get the Archangel Staff here or the Thieves Glove. Both work, but probably Archangels for now. We'd probably put that on our Nico as our secondary carry. In this new shop here, we have 102 gold, 68 to level up. You could level up now and just play a random unit, or you could wait a little bit. Honestly, it probably doesn't affect that much in terms of like total outcome of the game, but probably you should just level up, knock some people out, and probably play maybe the Morgana. Morgana wouldn't be too bad. She CC'd some... Oh, I forgot we had Fiddlesticks. I thought we already had him in there before. But yeah, Fiddle's got a great AoE CC, very powerful unit, and he always goes off because of the way the corrupted trait works. Oh no, we're facing this Aurelion Soul player again. So the way we need to beat this player is just by spreading out. Aurelion Soul is really good if you are not spread out, so we just need to do that in order to beat this player. Unfortunately, once he hits Aurelion Soul 2-star, he might just beat us no matter what. So it's a little tricky. Also, Janna makes it kind of hard to do that, but yeah, the late game of this team comp that we have here, it relies a lot on Syndra pulling in units, and Aurelion Soul doesn't really care about pulled in units because he AoEs a lot of people anyways. What Syndra is typically good against is a lot of the single target damage dealers. So if you have like a Jax, if you have even like a Samira, she only hits 2 units at a time. She's very powerful against those types of units, but if you have AoE, not as effective. So our late game cap is going to be slightly lower than it normally would be. And that just really depends on who you are playing against in your game. In some games, you're going to do really well with a certain comp because it counters the enemies you're facing, and other games, you're going to do pretty badly because sometimes you're getting countered. That's why sometimes when people comment on like my tier list, for example, they're like, hey, I hit the comp that you told me to hit. Why didn't I win? Or like, I can't get past 4th place by playing this exact build that you showed me. And sometimes it just depends on who you're facing. There are a billion other factors as well, such as like how you're playing. That's probably the most important one, honestly. But some games truly are very difficult to win just based on someone getting super, super lucky and you can't beat them. Another thing to consider here is we could still get stronger. What we're really looking for right now is Echo 2. Echo 2-star is a big tank upgrade over Nyla. Nyla's great tank in the early game because she does a lot of flat healing, which is pretty nice whenever health pools are low. But in the late game, health pools are pretty high, so our healing is a little less effective. We keep getting cleaned by this 1-star Aurelion Soul, by the way. We really just need to spread out. I think I'm just forgetting to do it while I was in the game. But hopefully we get Echo 2 here. That's going to be a big, big, big upgrade. Maybe we drop Kaisa for that and then drop the Static Shiv onto my Twisted Fate. Kaisa, not really that useful, especially without Quick Draw. We do have another Echo, but we need a new Nyla as well. And then we want to transfer our items onto Echo. So I'm trying to spread out a little bit now. I should move my Syndra over to the left 1 square, but I failed to do so. But hopefully by the next time we face the Aurelion Soul player, we are able to dodge his attacks. We do get shrouded here. We have a shroud also, but we didn't really hit any of the juicy targets. But luckily we're facing the ghosts. Ghost boards are a little bit weaker because you can't actually deal damage to them if you win. So I think that's why they're a little weaker. Actually, that's a lie. Ghost boards are technically supposed to be the same strength, but there are a lot of bugs that happen on the ghost board and they just haven't fixed them yet. Though I don't think that the game should make them the same strength as a regular board, but they have said in the past that it is a bug. But I kind of like the bug because I don't think it's fair to face a ghost and not being able to deal damage to them. We're finally in a 1v1 versus the Aurelion Soul player. He still does not have Aurelion Soul 2-star. Surely we do better this fight. We were getting demolished before, but look at that. See, one of the rockets hit our Twisted Fate and then it missed our Lux, but then the second one did hit our Lux. But we're able to win this one because of the whole thing I explained before. We simply just had to spread out, and he has to not hit Aurelion Soul 2-star. So pretty lucky for us there. Let's get the Syndra. That gives us Syndra 2-star, and we get another Shroud. Shroud's pretty good against Aurelion. Oh no, he got it. Unlucky. He got Aurelion Soul off the carousel. I wouldn't call it unlucky, actually, because we get our Syndra 2, and by this point in the game, stage 6-4, 6-5, he really should have Aurelion Soul 2-star already. It's kind of lucky that he doesn't yet. We finally get Echo 2, sell that Nyla, get that person out of there. She's just not that great in the late game. Echo, beautiful in the late game. And I'm actually going to spread out the items a little bit because Fiddlesticks going to work really well with the Sunfire Cape because he's going to be jumping into the back. Echo also does jump to the back, but Fiddlesticks, he's a 2-star legendary. You kind of have to put items on him. Oh, I forgot to buy a unit to throw in. Whoops. Is that going to cost us a game? Our Syndra threw in no units, but yeah, Echo's not going to be able to finish that. Is that going to make a difference? Would a Rammus thrown in there have made a difference? This fight's actually pretty close. Maybe it would have. Holy cow, we actually did not finish the job because we forgot to buy a unit for our Syndra to throw in. That's really unfortunate. Hopefully this doesn't give him like a chance to come back. I honestly forgot what happened at the end of this game. 2 Urgots, that's good stuff to throw in, so sell the Rammus. I probably do want to finish the game right now because he could get potentially like Fiddlesticks 2-star if we wait a couple rounds, whereas I don't really have that many upgrades to go for. In fact, I don't think I have any upgrades to go for. But we throw in the Urgot this fight, we throw in the second Urgot, and we are able to clean up this game. Probably could have done it a little bit better if we spread out earlier in the game, but we still get a nice first place there with Lux reroll. So we did 2 1-cost reroll games, which hopefully helps you all kind of understand how to play around those. I do have more advanced reroll variations that I have on like some of my previous games. So you could check that out if you want, because I will say that these games we did get a little bit lucky to get those 3 stars. But let's hop on into the gold game. This is where things get a little bit trickier. In gold, people start watching some YouTube videos. I know a lot of viewers of the channel are in this rating, and after that, the game, it definitely does mean it's going to be a little bit more difficult than the iron, bronze, and silver games. However, fundamental TFT still reigns supreme here. And don't get me wrong, you could still definitely have a lot of fun in this rating. You don't have to try super serious quite yet. But again, this is where you'll see more people. Maybe they're playing the S tier comps, but they're playing them maybe a little bit incorrectly. Maybe they're trying out the C tier comps just because they like certain champions, and maybe those games don't go quite as well either because they're playing them suboptimally too. So I will say this game, we are going to be forcing kind of like a troll comp, not so much from the beginning at these augment selections. Here you could take either preparation or second wind. I wouldn't take spellslinger because we have no copies of spellslingers. A mistake I see a lot of players making is they see a certain trait augment and they're like, oh, that's one of the S tier, that's one of the A tier comps. Let me just click it and go for it. But if you don't have the units for it, it's not going to be a good option for you, even if it is S++ tier, because sometimes like you just need to have the units to actually play the comp. But this game, we're actually going to be forcing Draven. Don't ask me why. I just felt like adding a 2-cost reroll game to the compilation. So we're just going to force Draven and see what happens. We have a bunch of supers here. Unfortunately, the person we're playing is also going for supers. You see he has a Malphite 2-star and a Lee Sin. So it's definitely going to be a tiny bit contested. There are other Draven versions. Some run hackers. Some run just random good units such as threat units. But this game, we're just going to try to go for Draven and see what happens. Another mistake here is, let's say you really like to play Draven. When should you play Draven? That's a good question. Well, if you get a good augment for him, that could be a start. So if you get one of the Draven augments. Another good augment option is something like combat training. You could start stacking attack damage stacks on him really early. But the main thing you want to have whenever you play Draven is having a Last Whisper component. That's going to be either the bow or the glove. And we don't have that right now, so we're just going to do some testing, see how well this goes. And yeah, this other person might also be going Draven. He has a Last Whisper and an Infinity Edge. Those are two very good items for Draven. So not a good start for us if we are indeed forcing Draven. So when you see this in your games, immediately switch. But I just want to show you that you can still do well despite perhaps being contested. At this point in the game, we can assume that because we saw one person going for mascots, and that person has two of the best Draven items possible, and he has a Draven on his board, so it does make a lot of sense that he would go for it too. So we'll see. Just remember, even if I am higher ranked than the players I'm facing, if I'm going for a comp that it does not have a good start for it, if I'm going for a comp that I don't have the items for, that loses like a lot of my edge, you know? So there's also a component of luck. Like in the previous games, some games we just hit the 3-star really easily. And there are other games where you play reroll and you just never hit it at all, even if you have a billion gazillion gold that you rolled down. Like even like sometimes like Jeff Bezos, he can't even find the comps that he wants. So we're going to look at the game we have here. So second wind, we took that option at first because I thought I wanted to play seriously. We had a bunch of tank items, and second wind works well with tank items, especially if you have a tank 2-star. Again, you'd know that if you looked at the augment guide. However, the best option there was probably going to be preparation. Not because we're rerolling right now, but because we didn't have any upgrades yet, so we would have units on our bench to pick up stacks, and then we could possibly go for a win streak in stage 3, and then just kind of go back and forth in stage 2. That would probably be the very best thing to take if you're like super tryharding, but second win's just a good overall or well-rounded augment. By the way, we got a sword and a bow off the carousel. Very strong items for Draven because he could use a lot of sword items, and we need the Last Whisper with the bow. And then because we got those items, we had 5 components on our bench, so I went ahead and built the Redemption. Maybe we could have built a Sunfire Cape. I don't really like Sunfire Cape that much in a Draven comp. It's not bad per se, but Malphite, he is a champion that generally likes pure tank items such as Warmogs, Bramble Vest, and Dragonclaw. And Redemption's like the only item of that I could build right now. Another reason to build the Redemption is something called item economy. So I know a lot of players have heard this term, and they don't really know what to do with it. So pretty much whenever you get a weird item such as a tier doesn't really belong in this build, right? So you kind of want to get rid of it. And Redemption, while it isn't something like a Warmogs or something like that, it's still very solid on a Malphite. So you get to burn the tier, like that's a phrase people kind of use, like just burning an item, because it's pretty useless in the comp. And if you look at tier, what it could build, the best item is going to be either Protector's Vow or the Redemption. I think Redemption's slightly better, so we went ahead and go for that, even though in a lot of other builds you might be like, hey, I want to build the Sunfire Cape because that's just a very solid early game item and I could potentially save some HP from it. But that's the reason why you want to use the tier. From the neutral camps, we get a bunch of gold. We also get an additional Draven. And then to finish this off, we're going to get a bunch more gold, and we're going to check on the person who was going for Draven, and he actually switched his item holder to Lucian. So one big mistake that player made, it's not the fact that he switched off of Draven, it's the fact that he switched off of Draven and used Lucian as an item holder. So let's think about that for a moment. You generally want to use attack damage dealers to hold your attack damage items. However, I know Lucian is an attack damage carry in the game League of Legends, which TFT is based off of, and you may fall into the trap of thinking, hey, Lucian is an attack damage carry, even though he's AP in this TFT game mode. By the way, we build Bloodthirster here because it's just a solid item on him, and we just want to slam our items as early as possible. And he might be thinking, hey, you know what? He could still be a solid item holder. And I would say yes, in past sets, that could be very viable. A lot of like the hybrid champions, even if their spell does AP damage, they're still decent holders of AD items. However, in this specific case, Draven items do not work on Lucian. Let me show you why. So I'm going to head on over to teamfight.lol. It's a website. And then I'm going to click on champions. Once the champions populate, I'm going to look down for Lucian. So Lucian's up in the 1 cost, just click him there. And then you'll notice right away, look at his attack damage. He has 20 attack damage, which is essentially nothing. So you're putting a lot of attack damage and attack speed items on him, but he's just not going to be able to pump out anything with those items. Let's compare this to, let's say, a Kayle. Kayle's got 55 attack damage. Let's look at Ashe, another 1 cost unit. Ashe has 60 attack damage. Lucian just does not make great use of attack damage. And the way items work, so if we click on items here, we look at, let's say, a Deathblade. Deathblade gives a lot of attack damage. It gives 66% attack damage. It does not give flat attack damage. So essentially, if we take out a calculator, 20 times 0.66 means that from a Deathblade, we get 13 attack damage on our Lucian. But on someone like Ashe, which has 60 attack damage, 60 times 0.66, you actually get 39, almost 40. I think it rounds up to 40. So you get like 27 more attack damage just based on the unit you choose. That's a very big difference, and that's why you don't use Lucian as an attack damage item holder. Now you may be wondering, how do I know who to use as an item holder? Well, on the website, on my tier list, you could click on any comp. Let's click on the Mech Sure Shot comp. There's going to be some item holders in this section down here, and you can see the attack damage item holders. It's going to be Ashe, Sivir, and Draven. And that's how you know who to use. You could also just use teamfight.lol, click on every single champion, and compare within the same cost of units. So for example, if you're looking at like, oh, who's the best 3 cost attack damage item holder? Click all the blue champions and then figure out which ones have the best attack damage, which ones have the best attack speed. You could also look at the combined DPS over here. We didn't even check that out. But Lucian's is 14 or 21. And then Ashe is 42 or 63. Kayle is 36 or 54. And then you just see the difference immediately right there. Now, I'm not saying never, ever, ever put attack damage items on Lucian. Obviously, there's going to be some times that call for it, but don't use him as like your first choice, second choice, or even like 4th choice, you know? There are just many other champions you could use instead. So let's take it this round here. We actually pull off the win. I thought Thrill the Hunt was going to surprise us there, but that person is level 4, so we obviously win. We get an interesting thing here, 3-3-4. I'm forcing Draven, even though we have only 2 copies of him. So you definitely should just pivot to Bel'Veth here. It's just clear as day. You build Titan's Resolve and you build the Bloodthirster already. So just drop those items both on your Bel'Veth and then you can just chill after that. But I want to just force Draven because I'm bored, you know? So we buy the Jax, or we pick the support Jax augment. When he dies, he gives us a lot of armor and attack speed. So it's like, I wouldn't say it's the best thing in the world, but it's pretty good, you know? It's like better than nothing. I was definitely hoping more for a 2 cost augment and picking up one of the Draven ones, no doubt. But we might get smacked around a little bit here. So that's a little unlucky, I will say. So 1, we had a horrible start because we didn't have the right items. 2, we did not have the right champions. 3, while second wind is a good augment for general flexing, when you force a Draven reroll, you need like very good augments for him. So that's already like 3rd mistake there. And then 4, we're getting unlucky on the augments because people are going to get a 4 cost augment. Like this person gets the carry Aurelion Soul one. And even if we beat him now, let's just say we win this round magically. He's going to scale a lot harder because he has his 4 cost unit just like ready to go. He ends up actually just beating us here anyway. So like that whole point is unnecessary, but we do get a Garen here. He doesn't actually improve our team that much. We just get to play a Garen. Getting 4 Mecha Prime doesn't really do too much for your team. We end up just dropping in the Garen Just make sure he's not the one being connected to the mech, so he actually stays on the field, because Garen's just a better unit than either Wukong or Jax. And also your Jax, you always want him to be eaten with this Grandmaster augment, because you get a benefit when he dies. So when he dies right at the start, you get the benefit a little bit earlier. A lot of y'all may be wondering, like, what are we doing right now? What's the game plan? So first things first, we want to slow roll for 2-cost units. What's the best way to do that? Well, you do it at level 6. So our econ this game, it wasn't horrible. It just wasn't good. It was like slightly below average. So maybe like 49th percentile or something like that. So we don't have the most gold, so we need to wait till we're above 50 gold at level 6 and then roll down to 50 every single turn. Potentially, I made a mistake. I probably should not have leveled up to level 6 on stage 3-2, and I should have done it on stage 3-5 instead. And 3-5 is the stage after this carousel right here. So here we want a glove because we want the last whisper, and we are able to pick that up, so that is all fine and dandy right there. Sell the Sona, we don't need it, and I guess you could roll once here, but it's not really that necessary. Just be patient when you reroll. Another option we could have done is rolled on stage 3-2 until we get Draven 2-star, but we're already pretty behind right now, so we just need to, or I thought we needed to just save up as much gold as possible. We were facing off against the Anima Squad player. There's the Misfortune Augment. Oh, it's a support one, but for some reason there's a Nasus 3 on this person's board, which is really funny because the rest of his team is 1-star. So it actually isn't that strong. I think if we had a 2-star Draven, we would win this round very, very easily, but unfortunately, not able to kind of connect all the dots there. But as you can see, this 1-star Draven, because he has good items, it's actually not doing too horribly. Now that we are above 50 gold, just start the slow roll. So buy all the super units, so we see Malphite. We're going to roll down a little bit. Don't need Renekton, he's just holding items for us right now. There's a Jax, we could pick up a Jax too. There's a Riven, we could potentially play Riven because he's a brawler and a defender, so we could get to 4 defender if we want it. Some Draven builds use the super, some Draven builds use 4 defender. Both versions are valid. It doesn't really matter that much. For some reason, I put the items on Garen. I probably should have put it on Malphite, so that's a small mistake right there. Let's see who we are facing. We are facing a Gnar player. Gnar, on this patch, he was pretty good, and oh, he didn't swap the items over to Gnar yet. Oh my god, you cannot have this Lucian still holding these items. Oh my goodness. I don't care if we lose this round. It's just, yeah. If you know, you know. So now you know, and you won't make that mistake. But he has a Rammus 3. Holy cow. And I guess we still win. We have a 1-star Draven, by the way. If we had 2-star Draven, then I'm like, yeah, maybe we could win. But this is how weak the items are. He's essentially just down 2 items right now. And that's not helping the cause at all, is it? Now, I'm not trying to be mean or bully or anything, but you just see the difference in like such a small little thing, right? It's just knowing who the right item holders are. And some games you're like, hey, how come during stage 3, I like just lost all my rounds for no reason? And that could be potentially one reason why. Maybe you're using the wrong item holder, and hopefully you don't make that mistake in the future. We rolled down a bit. We got a couple of good units. We did get the Draven too, but just as like a comparison to the average outcome of a game, we are very far behind on the amount of Dravens we should have right now. So this is pretty dangerous spot. Luckily, we get a item we could use, so we could build the, what's it called? The Gargoyle Stoneplate. It's a decent item, not the best, not the worst. I don't like Stoneplate plus Redemption because they're kind of counterintuitive with each other. But here I realized, let's just play the Malphite, let's play the supers, and then I just sell them anyways. So just drop the items on the Malphite right now and slam just to get more value. I also like placing my main tank in front of my Draven, just in case something weird happens, no one sneaks by and starts attacking him. This glove is probably going on the Draven anyways. Its only item I want on it is Infinity Edge, and I guess we could build a Thieves Gloves anyways, right? And if you build a Thieves Gloves, the glove will pop off of him. Other than that, we don't really need any other item on this Draven from the glove. Any sword item would do here, though. Okay, not bad. We're against a 2-star LeBlanc, easy being green Nico, and we actually only lose by 2 units, so that was a pretty good cleanup there. And remember, our team is super weak for this point in the game right now. Golden Ticket is good, don't get me wrong, it's great for reroll, but now is not the time. You don't want Golden Ticket when you're this late into the game. Unfortunately, when we rerolled the augment, we got even worse options. So if I had to go back in time, or if I had the option of choosing 6 different augments, I would probably have picked any of the first 3 augments we saw. We had new recruit, we had golden ticket, and we also had the quicksilver one, the verdant veil. All 3 of those are much better than this lucky glove. So a little bit unlucky there. Normally you don't get 3 bad augments, but sometimes it happens. So I guess let's just add that to the list of bad stuff that happened this game. So so the first augment, we griefed ourselves, right? Second win, we should have taken preparation or something, or even the other one. The Jax augment, even though Jax is usable, everyone else got a lot stronger from it, relatively speaking. And then now on the prismatic, we get a bad prismatic. So a lot of things are going wrong this game. We don't have that many copies of Draven. Some people, if you get like Think Fast there, you just get your full team 3-star. You get 3-star Malphite, 3-star Draven, 3-star Lee Sin, 3-star Gangplank, and then you're pretty chilling after that. There are a lot of other things that could have gone differently there is what I'm trying to say. And typically Draven games definitely do go a lot better than this. Right now I have Draven in the B tier. I think he's like B- or something. So it's not even that good of a comp. So if you're forcing a much better comp, like maybe one of the S tier comps, your game should be going a lot better than the outcome of this one. It's not going to happen all the time, but one important thing to do in TFT is knowing how to make use of like bad situations. You know how like I like using a lot of poker comparisons to TFT, even though I don't really play poker, but sometimes you get a bad hand in poker, right? So you need to know when to fold with them or like when to bluff with them. And kind of the same thing goes with TFT, except you just need to make the most of it. But making the most of it could be 2 different things. So sometimes you want to hopefully get a 6th place instead of an 8th place. Sometimes you're like, hey, I can maybe sneak in a 3rd here if like one other thing goes my way. But then there's some games where you're just like, hey, maybe I could get first with this because things are going well for me. I ate a good breakfast that morning, and you could go ahead and go for first place those games. By the way, on this stage, we want a sword, and there's only 1 sword. So hopefully we get it because we really need that infinity edge. And are we able to get it? Please get it. What am I doing? Okay, we grabbed the sword. Oh no, I remember now why I was thinking so long on that decision. I wanted to build a second Thieves Gloves. The thing is, or the only issue with that, is that if you do build a second Thieves Gloves, who does it go on? Jax and Wukong are both getting eaten by the mech. We're not a high level enough to play Garen yet, so the only other option for a Thieves Glove holder is Gangplank. And 2-star Gangplank, you don't really care about him that much, so you just go for the IE. Rolling down a bit, this is where I decided to all in a little bit because we were really close to Draven and we were close to Malphite. Unfortunately, during this roll down, we just don't hit, so we're just going to stop at 10 gold right there. Perhaps I could have waited 1 more turn, but I'm starting to take a little bit of damage, so I'm getting a little scared. You always need to find a time to all in correctly, and now that we have like best in slot Draven items, everyone was 2-star, and we was really close to getting Draven 3-star and like Malphite 3. I felt like it was a decent time to all in. The only mistake we made, because I do think rolling there is fine, is buying the Jaxes. I don't think we should have bought the Jaxes. Sometimes you need to recognize when you can actually go for a certain 3-star. And in a game where you don't have your primary carries at 3-star, you don't have the money to go for stuff like Jax 3. So if we had Draven 3-star at least, or if we have like Malphite 3-star with like 1 off of the Draven, then you could go for the Jax. But because we just don't have enough gold, I just shouldn't have bought him. Luckily, we get the Malphite 3 there. Whenever you're 1 off 2 things that are 3-star, just like roll to 0. Normally, I like staying at around 10 gold. I believe I had like a tips and tricks video before when I'm like, never go below 10 gold because it really helps you get to 20 gold, 30 gold, 40 gold, etc. But when situations get a little dire or you're like really close to like giga spiking, Draven 3 is a giga spike, same with Malphite 3, you can roll past 10. And that's one of those times when you kind of break those rules. And you might be wondering, like, how do I know when to break the rules? How do I know when to stick to them? And that just comes with experience. There's no one answer because if there was, like, everyone would be very high rank, or actually no one would be very high rank because everyone would kind of be playing the same way. So just recognize that there are some key decision points in games and try to make note of them. Like, take a screenshot or something of it, or if you're recording your games, just like rewatch it and think deeply. Be like, did I make the right play at that critical decision point, or like, should I have done something else? If you really think about this game in particular, we didn't really make that many decisions because we were just slow rolling for like most of the game, right? We had to decide to go for a certain comp at some point. We had to pick our first augment. The second augment kind of was picked for us. We didn't really make any decisions there. We had the option to like all in at a certain point. And again, like all those decision points, like we're at stage 5-1 right now. There aren't really that many decisions to make in a TFT game. Obviously, there are much smaller stakes decisions, such as like, oh, how should I position for this fight against these people that I scouted? Maybe I put my Draven on the left side. Maybe I put my Draven on the right side. Maybe I put my Gangplank 2 squares down or 3 squares down. Like obviously, those are still decisions that need to be made. However, like in the grand scheme of things, knowing when to roll is going to have a much bigger impact on like how much LP you gain. By the way, we are 1 off Jax 3 and 2 off of Lee Sin. We do have the champion duplicator on our bench, so if we were like 20 life, I'd probably just Nico the Jax. But since we are at 41, I think we could wait a little bit. Hopefully we get to get all of them to 3-star and then level up. I'm just going to donkey roll here, and it feels a little bad right now. Another thing to recognize whenever you play a reroll comp is knowing how many units you need to play. So some comps, they require leveling up. Like the Gnar comp, for example, if you ever get Gadgettine Heart or Crown, you want to level up to level 8 before you slow roll for Gnar 3-star, which is typically done at level 7 because you want to fit 5 Gadgettine into your team. However, if you don't have that Gadgettine Heart, then you just stay level 7 and reroll for Gnar 3. So you have to think about the Draven comp. If we look at the synergies on the left-hand side, what would we actually want to run? Like the next best in is probably either like an Aurelion Soul or like a Garen. And that's not like that big of a power spike compared to other teams where you could go for like 6 Star Guardian or something like that, or activate like 4 Ox Force. And because of the way this comp works, there's just not much you need to put in at level 7. So the big power spike does come at level 8, but we are too far away from that right now. Now, I don't know how everyone's brains work, but the reason why I talk the way I do, I ask a lot of questions, and I kind of talk to myself in my head to think through certain decisions. Hopefully that doesn't mean I'm like going nuts or something like that, but it's just ways to kind of figure out what you should be doing. You're like, what's my life total right now? Oh, I'm at 29. Is that high or low for stage 5? It's a little bit low, but then you compare it to the general game and you're like, hey, there's one person above me. We're in 4th place right now. And the one person above me is at 34, so we're actually pretty close. But there is one player at 9 HP, so that person might die soon, and then you could kind of play around that. We want to pick up a utility item here. There's not really much. I guess you just go Edge of Night, or like maybe the Protector's Vow would have been best. Another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of players like watching the ends of games. And while it is fun to kind of check out, a lot of times most of the knowledge that comes with playing TFT comes more from the early game. That's why for my augment guide, I make like an early game augment guide instead of like a late game augment guide. Because in the end game, a lot of decisions are kind of made for you. Like we didn't really have to do too much there. We just saw that like, oh, we have enough gold to level up to level 7. We have nothing else to roll for at level 6. So let's just level up, throw in a Pyke, because out of this shop, Pyke is probably the best option because he CCs a bunch of units. I know Jinx has some CC as well, but Pyke hits more units, so he's just better overall at that slot. We couldn't afford something like a Garen, so also like he's not in our shop right now, so that's why we settle on that. Now, while the decisions are easier at this state in the game, make sure you actually execute on it though. There are a lot of times, even when I review my own games, I see a very obvious play that I missed, and I don't really get to learn anything from that mistake because I already know what the mistake is. So whenever you do play the game, make sure you just use all the knowledge that you actually have. If not, it's just sitting in your head useless, you know? And yeah, pretty much what I'm trying to say is like, despite knowing a lot of things, you still have to put it into practice. And that's most of what TFT is. There aren't that many hidden secrets in TFT, despite or contrary to popular belief. And it's part of the reason why good players from previous sets, maybe like a set 2 player or something like that, who takes like a 1-year break or 2-year break, comes back to TFT and still destroys everyone. They're able to do that because a lot of the general knowledge in TFT is just very constant. There aren't any like secret texts that people can use that are like that prevalent. And even if there are, the information on that spreads really, really quickly because we live in the age of the internet where like information can just spread very quickly. I know I just said the same thing twice, but that's really the truth of the situation. So even like in non-TFT stuff, there are a lot of things in this world that just aren't secrets. But since this is a video game, like no one's like hiding that many secrets. So never think that someone's beating you or like things are causing you to not climb because you just like don't know of like some secret interaction, like yeah, they definitely do help, but just playing regular plain old good TFT is more than enough to hit whatever rank you want to hit. At this state in the game, we're just donkey rolling for a Garen 2-star. If you're unfamiliar with the term donkey rolling, it really just means rolling down to 0 gold, hoping you hit stuff. I don't know when that started to become a thing. I think it was in set 1, but I'm not sure who like coined the phrase. It must have just been said by one person and then adopted very widely. Oh yeah, another thing to think about when playing the Draven comp, you don't really see it in this matchup, but putting Draven on the left versus the right side has big implications because on the right side, he only gets hit by 2 melee units, whereas on the left, he could get hit by 3. On average, if you just don't want to scout, just leave him on the bottom right corner. But yeah, we had a ton of stuff go wrong this game, but we still were able to get into gold from this gold game. This plat game is going to be one of the more interesting games based on the augments we receive. We started the game with a glove, so we get Sivir, Annie, Ezreal in our first box. And then we get an interesting shop here. Probably like the 2 Lulus are probably nice because it's just nice to hold on to pairs. And then we do have 2 underground. For some reason, I don't buy the Lulus, but I really don't know why. I was probably just asleep at the wheel. Let's buy the Siluses, drop in the Nasus, and then we are potentially going to go for an Anima Squad game. We get a Chain Vest to finalize our early game, and let's see the augment selection here. So we're going to go for Portable Forge. It's one of the most popular augments, but I feel like it's misused a lot of times. So one easy way to check out what items to get is to look on the augment guide that I have and see which items I think are the best for that patch. But Manazane and Zonia's Paradox are both pretty good. Since we have the Anima start, or like I want to play Anima because I think Anima is just fun to play, I'm going to go for the Manazane because that is one of the best Misfortune items you could possibly get. I do make a small mistake here. I end up slamming Hand of Justice and leveling up, and I'm essentially just trying to play for a win streak even though I don't have any upgrades. And I don't have like many synergies either, so that's just like a huge mistake. In fact, the only synergy I have up is like, I guess Mascot, but like an Ace. Ace isn't really a real synergy. But yeah, that's a pretty big mistake there. And leveling up and not leveling up on stage 2-1 could decide a lot of games. So you might be wondering now, like, oh, when should I level up? When should I not level up? And luckily we faced someone who's not building items here and did not level up, so we might be able to sneak a win out. But you want to level up if you can kind of win streak, or if you just want to save HP in general. And in order to do that, you need to have upgrades. So if you have at least 1 2-star unit with like an item you can build, or 2 2-star units, but maybe the item you build is like not that great, that could be a sign to level up and play for a win streak. Another sign is like if you need to put a key synergy in that's really good in the early game, or you can level up, put in like a threat unit like this Rammus that we see here, or if you get a really good early game win streaking augment. So if you get like Cursed Crown or something like that, you're like probably going to win. Or if you get like Built Different, you want to start a win streak, those are going to be pretty decent. But here we just drop in the 2 brawlers, we play the Rammus, and then we face another level 3 player. So we're able to pick up another quick win here. I hope Draven's like pretty decent at holding most items. And yeah, like I know Manazane isn't like best Draven item, but it's not the worst because he still uses the mana pretty decently. And then the Hand of Justice is also pretty nice. By the way, whenever you pick an Ornn augment or an Ornn item, you have to really think about what comps you want to play later on into the game. So who uses Manazane? Let's think about that for a moment. Well, Sona's a pretty good item holder for it because she gets a lot of cast off. But what about for the late game? So the best users of Manazane, and this kind of just comes with general knowledge, I will show other ways to kind of like figure it out, but it changes based on the meta. But the best users of Manazane are going to be Misfortune, Aurelion Soul, champions like that, like Syndra, Janna, champions that use a lot of mana. Nico can use it, or like Star Guardians can use it in general. So you want to kind of lean more into those comps. That's why I was holding on to the Anima Squad units, even though we were not stacking Anima Squad stacks. Unfortunately, it looks like we get to lose this game. This person has 3 2-starred units, and that's just going to be way too powerful for us. On this carousel, we want to pick up a defensive item because we don't really have... Oh, the Warmugs would have been so good. We'll settle for maybe the Dragon Claw. Because we already have 2 damage items and we have no offensive items, so we definitely need to mix and match. Typically, this is another decision point. Whenever you level up to level 4 on stage 2-1, you generally want to also level up to level 5 on stage 2-5. The reason why is because you want to just keep up, like the leveling is cheap. It only costs 4 gold after that point. So you just want to do that and add in an extra unit. And if we're being nitpicky here, I'm not sure why I sold the Gadgettine units. I probably should have just played the Gadgettine units because I'm running Sona as my item holder, and then like I play Annie for Spellslinger. So I probably should have kept on to the Lulu. Yeah, no clue. Absolutely zero clue why I sold her, but it happens, you know. We build the Dragonclaw onto our Rammus. So Dragonclaw, in some metas, it's really good, and whenever there are a lot of attack or magic damage dealers, but it's also just a general good item. I think Stoneplate, it's good if you have like solo tanks or duo tanks. And in this game, we have a bunch of different tanks. So I'd rather get more value from the Dragonclaw. A comp that we could possibly play is like one of the Nico comps or just an Aurelion Soul comp. So we want to think about what tanks we're going to be running in the late game. So I'll give you guys a moment to think about that. So feel free to pause, but the tanks in the Anma squad comp, which we probably won't play because we sold all the Anmas, but it's going to be like Riven and Echo and Legendaries. And that means you're running a lot of different tanks. So Dragonclaw would probably be better than the Stoneplate in that case. If we're thinking about the Aurelion Soul build, the tanks are going to be either like Aatrox or the mech. So Garen mech with Aurelion Soul is a definitely pretty good build. And even though Stoneplate is very good on Garen because mechs are kind of like solo frontline teams, it's actually not better than Dragonclaw because Dragonclaw is like one of Garen's best items because it heals based on % health, and Garen's got a lot of health because mech just does that. Off the Krugs, we get a bunch of gold and then also a belt. I guess like a bunch of champions and a belt. So we get Rammus too. That is absolutely disgusting huge. Our team is just giga chilling right now. The only awkward part about our team is that we're running 2 duplicates, which means that we don't have many synergies in play. It's not the end of the world, but we definitely do want to try to fix that in the next couple of rounds. So we are facing off against a person with a lot of upgrades, but Rammus 2-star should be able to outshine all of these because he has a bunch of 3 costs or a bunch of 1 cost and 2 cost upgrades. He's got Camille 2, Blitz 2, Silas 2, Lucian 2, but Rammus with items just completely obliterates some teams. So one thing to think about, it's great to have a lot of upgrades, but upgrades get exponentially better. Not exponentially, but like a lot better when they have items on them. So if you have a bunch of 2-star units, but they have no items on them, it's not going to be that great. But if you have a 2-star unit with an item on it, it's going to be that much more special. So we're going to pick up a salvage bin here. Whenever you're playing like weird stuff that you don't really know what you're going to go into, because we have a lot of different options from here, we could pretty much play almost any comp. Getting salvage bin is kind of nice to just slam any item and kind of just wait and see what happens. Sunfire board would be pretty good here. The only weird part is that I want to go for Aurelion Soul carry, and Aurelion Soul already puts the healing debuff on people. So it's kind of like an overlap or lost value that I don't really want to do. With that in mind, I could build the Sunfire Cape on Rammus because we're going to sell it later anyways, and Salvage Bin kind of fixes that. But I'm actually going to go for a Shroud of Stillness and Zeezerot Portal. I am kind of just testing, but I'm always convinced that Zeezerot is one of the best early game items. And it is the early game right now, and we're probably going to sell the Rammus anyway, so we might as well just build this garbage and just roll with it. Other options we could have considered is maybe the Guard Breaker. So if we build Guard Breaker, that's a belt and a glove, then we would be left with a bow and a chain, so we could build a Titan's Resolve. That could be perfectly fine too. It's probably honestly better than what we ended up building. You put the Guard Breaker on Sona and then the Titan's Resolve on your Rammus. That probably would have been like very, very okay. But let's check out the augment choice that we get here. It's going to be, oh, nice, Annie too. Wait, we already picked our augment. I thought we were in the augment selection. That's going to be very welcome. We also get a Belveth. And then, yeah, we're just going to leave our team like this. I know Shen doesn't really give us many synergies. So, like, he's not that important. But I'd rather sell the Ribbon to get to 40 gold rather than play Defender. Shen's just like an overall okay unit because he gives his whole like damage resistance thing. So he's not like a bad tank, and we didn't really have anything better to throw in. Like, would I rather have a Morgana here or something like that? Like, of course, but Morgana doesn't show up in your shop. You can't play her, you know? I'd also like to win the lottery, but well, I don't buy lotto tickets, but like if I did, like maybe I don't win, you know? But we're able to get some quick wins here, and we are going to start like this mini win streak. So obviously this all revolves around getting that Rammus 2-star. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But let's say we didn't get it. What would we do instead? We probably just do the same exact thing that we're doing now, but we just wait a little bit more for late game. Then if we didn't hit Rammus, maybe we hit something else. For items here, maybe the rod would have been good, but that got taken. I guess you could do Necatron Cloak. It doesn't really matter which item we get because we just want more gold right now, because with Salvage Bin, you could pretty much build any item combination that you want. So we're not really too concerned about that. But yeah, Salvage Bin is always one of those weird augments. I actually don't recommend like not high rank players taking this because it's very difficult to use optimally. If you want to like show off, then yeah, play Salvage Bin. But if you just want to like play an easy game and you don't want to like think too much or too deeply, then like definitely don't take it. And they're definitely different types of players. So it just depends on who you are. Nothing's wrong with either. You could get to high ranks both with using and without using Salvage Bin. Like personally for me, I don't use Salvage Bin when I'm on my main account, just because it's just like way too difficult to use. We actually lost this round. Did Sona actually fail one of her attacks? Oh man, that was a really close fight. That cost us our win streak. But it's okay. Oh, there's a Morgana we were talking about. We could drop that in over Draven. That's perfectly fine. But this game's a great example of just using what units you hit. Like Rammus and Sona don't really have any synergy together, right? But some players, they might force like a 4 Spellslinger build and run like 1-star LeBlanc, 1-star Lux or something like that, or even 2-star Lux instead of just like playing other stuff. Some games you want to do that, some games you don't. This game, like obviously hitting the 2-star Rammus gives us a sign of say like, hey, let's use him in the mid game. You don't necessarily have to keep him in the late game. And obviously like you do lose interest on him because he costs 9 gold. So if you did play like the cheaper Spellslinger build, for example, with a bunch of 1-stars, like yeah, you could potentially end up saving gold, but saving life and like dealing more damage to other players definitely means a lot. And I think it's something that gets underestimated a bit. Some players fall into the trap where they read a guide and they're like, hey, this guide says in stage 3, play this exact board. And then they overroll to try to like get to that board. And it could lead to a lot of bad stuff sometimes. By the way, these items are pretty interesting. Could go for a Shojin, but we have enough mana regen. You could go for a Declaw, maybe a Onyx Bark, maybe even a Chalice of Harmony. Pretty much any option here works. We're probably going to sell whatever we build anyways, which again makes playing this augment a little bit more difficult than it should be. But just slam anything. Like probably I'm going to build like maybe Bloodthirster on Belveth would have been the best here, but maybe Gunblade Belveth. I guess Shojin Sona's all right. Like, I don't know. The Sona kind of has like too much mana. I definitely should have itemized the Belveth here. Second Dragonclaw, like, do we need it? I don't know. And look at this. I took too long to think about what items to build that I forgot to level up to level 7. So sometimes like this augment, even though it's very good, the thinking you do with it, like sometimes costs you some rounds because you forget to play the rest of your turn, or you take too long thinking about the items that you just run out of time to like roll. Like imagine if we needed to roll at this stage. We'd have to do that whole roll down while still thinking about items. So we either like half-ass the roll down or we half-ass the items. Here's a pretty interesting thing. We could go for either a Janna or Aurelion Soul. I really want to go Aurelion Soul, but Janna with these items sounds pretty fun to me. So we're just going to sell this Sona right away. Just play the Janna. Probably Mana Zane, Shojin. Maybe like blue buff Mana Zane just to get the cast off quicker. Yeah, I think I do end up doing that because blue buff is great for getting that first cast. And then after that, by the way, I probably should have built Hextech Gunblade, not the Jeweled Gauntlet. Just because Gunblade, when you have these items and that augment on Janna, it'll just heal your entire team to full. You really don't need the extra damage or like relying on a critical strike to kind of kill people. But let's swap our team a little bit. So we did really want to tunnel into that Aurelion Soul, and you definitely could have re-rolled for that Acelil augment. But Category 5, it's just one of those good augments. You just kind of have to know which augments are good in the legendary ones. So try to research this before the game because it's going to change on every patch. I can't just tell you like, hey, this one's always good, because like that's just not true. I'd be like lying to you, because there are some patches where it's good, some patches where it's bad. You kind of need to just keep up a little bit with that. And maybe I'll make a video on that in the future. Did Janna just send her Cyclone to No Man's Land because of Zonia's Paradox? That's actually hilarious. I don't think I've ever seen that before this game. But let's see, what do we want to run now? Maybe like 4 or 6 Spellslinger, because I don't know if this Janna needs 2 casts to kill the front line or just 1 cast. If she's 2-star, it's probably just 1 cast, but if it's 1-star, maybe she needs 2 casts. So maybe I want to run 4 Spellslinger instead of 6 and run tanks instead. But then if she's 2-starred, then I just run 4 or even like 2 Spellslinger because she has enough damage to kind of kill everyone. These are kind of the things you need to be thinking about. By the way, she just casts right at the start of the fight. It's just so effective. And it's also pretty good against Ox Force because it just does damage over time. And it's enough to kind of like proc everyone's Ox Force ability. So we get some free wins here just from knowing what good augments are. This is the Platinum game, so players here, they generally do know what's going on. They know what the meta comps are. We haven't even seen like anyone troll that hard this game, I believe. So yeah, people are definitely going to be playing the meta at this rating. And even if they're not, like they either like know what they're doing or they like follow some guide. So what items do we want here? Probably like tank items. I don't even know. We kind of are like just chilling. Maybe we go for Nico items. I think at this point, you really just want to play more towards the late game. So we're just going to wait till we get to level 9. Some people roll on level 8 for legendary units. By the way, I think this is a mistake. I sold my Rammus 2. That definitely made me weaker. I don't even know why I did that. Well, I did it to put in 6 Spellslinger, but again, I think that's just a mistake. It's like the same mistake we talked about earlier on. Probably just not that good, you know? You may be wondering why I did not build Static Shiv here, because we did play Spellslingers before, and I said like, oh, Static Shiv, very good item. Well, category 5, Janna's carry augment, it makes it so that she deals true damage, so we don't need that magic penetration anymore. We also could have built Spear of Shojin on Nico, but the thing is, I built the Giant Slayer instead, because there's not really much use for the bow. So instead, I just opt to burn the bow and then save the tier for a better item later on. Now, let's analyze the fights a little bit. So you may have noticed we lost the last fight, and you might be wondering why. We were winning pretty much everything before that. Well, probably selling your main tank is the main mistake. But if you just watch the fights, Janna's going to get like at least 2 casts off, right? Because she has Mana Zane for the second cast and blue buff for the first cast. So we really just need our front line to live. So do we really need 6 Spellslingers? Probably not. We probably just want to be at like maybe 2 or 4, because she's not even one-tapping everyone at 6 Spellslinger. Sometimes like looking at pictures of comps is good, but other times like watching the fights in your individual games, because each lobby has different lobby strength, it's super, super, super important. Let's see what item we get here. We do get the Shojin that we wanted for Nico, so we'll probably just grab that. Maybe I should have done a tank item though, because again, like tank items are so important in this comp. So we build that there, we drop the LeBlanc, and then I'm going to drop maybe another Spellslinger just to get more tanks in. Honestly though, once we get an Echo 2-star, with the items that Annie has, that is a very, very powerful combination. So that's probably going to be what allows us to win the game, just because it's that strong. By the way, the way to kind of counter this Janna build or this Janna augment is to spread out. You notice here, she only hit like 2 units on the first one and only 3 with the second one. Whereas a lot of the other games that we won, we hit like half their team. So if you spread out against AoE comps, like obviously it's going to be a lot more manageable. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you see someone hitting something good, try to always analyze like, what can I do to beat his team? What are his team's strengths and how do I play around that? And then like, what are its weaknesses too? And then how do I abuse that? I'll give an example. In the hacker meta, a lot of people were scared of the hackers, and then what do hackers do? They bypass the frontline tanks. So when you bypass the frontline tanks, you don't need to build tanky units. You just need to have stronger backliners and like position a little more differently. That's why comps like Mech kind of struggled in that meta, because you had this super tanky Garen that just gets completely whiffed because the hackers jump to the backline and kill your main carry. And that's why comps like Jax did really, really well, because Jax as the main carry has a lot of survivability, so he could kind of live through some of those hacker hits. Another thing is, look at this fight here. That MF normally would do a ton of damage, but I had my Annie in front of my Janna, which blocked pretty much everything with the 2 Dragon Claws. Did I do that on purpose? No. I'm playing in a game where I'm playing on like a brand new account, so I'm not like super trying that hard. However, you could do this on purpose if you look at your matchups on the right-hand side, where you see like the sword icon. So right now we could face the person at 18 health and the person at 7 health. And then after that, you figure out like, how do I counter this comp? I see this MF here, and Annie's got 2 range, so she won't move if she's put on the 3rd row or 2nd row, however you want to, like, depends which perspective you're looking at. And because of that, with the 2 Dragon Claws, my Janna's not going to get hit by that misfortune, and ideally that should be a good thing, right? So you could always think about stuff like that whenever you're doing positioning in the late game, because apart from like rolling down to 0 when you need to all in, there's not that much you're doing in the late game. This fight was really close. This player's really strong right now. He hit the Vayne 3 power spike, and his TF's doing solid damage as well. The power spike that we are waiting for is going to be the Janna 2-star one. Also, there's Spellslinger or Star Guardian spatula here. If we had room on our Janna, it definitely would be Star Guardian spat. I'd love to see a blue buff Mana Zane Star Guardian build. That'd be really fun to see. Star Guardian Echo, though, is also really, really good. I think we were gushing about it in one of the previous games. I think he's the best Star Guardian or the best Spellslinger item holder. Oh, there's another Janna. There's too much in this shop. There's a Syndra. There's a Nico. Oh, man, that's kind of crazy. We'll try to buy as many of them as we can. I guess just play the random Syndra for 4 Star Guardian. Why not? And then probably lock the shop in order to get Janna. Sometimes you got to lock. Like, who knew that we had, like, 15 gold worth of stuff that we wanted to buy. I didn't actually do the math. I'm just estimating. Ooh, that's a pretty good Cyclone. We hit like 4 or 5 units. And then the second one should be coming. And that one not as effective, but still decent. Some of these comps... Whoa, where'd that Cyclone go? It just kind of went nowhere. All right, that's a little not fair. And we're going to lock the shop to hold on to this Janna. I wish I actually covered this in the Iron game or the Bronze game, but there is this little lock button on the bottom right that you could press to kind of keep your shop for the next round instead of having it auto-refresh. Also, I'm going to swap my Annie items over to my Echo because with Spellslinger, Echo is super, super tanky, as you'll see in just a moment. And then I'll probably put the extra Dragon Claw onto my Fiddlesticks because Fiddlesticks... damage items are better on him. I'd much rather have like Morellonomicon on him or like an Ionic Spark or like a Death Cap or something. But tank items also work pretty well in Fiddle just because he ends up taking a bunch of damage. So let's take a look at who we're facing. We're facing the Star Guardian player again. We're still in a good position against the Misfortune, so that's really nice. But this person has not spiked yet. They want Kaisa 3-star. And look at that. You notice the difference already? My Janna took a lot more damage from the Misfortune and other AoEs because Annie was not standing in that same spot. Echo, actually, in this specific matchup, was kind of a downgrade, which is kind of funny to think about. Either that or I need to position differently. So always keep that in mind whenever you're playing. Just because you upgrade a unit, you still have to rethink your positioning a little bit. We do end up hitting the Janna 2-star, which is funny because we're still at Nico 1, but hopefully we get her soon. This game is a little bit odd because I was able to hit level 9 really quickly. Sometimes you're not able to get the 2-star legendary because you're not able to have enough econ to get to level 9. And oh, by the way, the whole Janna taking damage thing, that's another reason why Hextech Gunblade is so good on her. But unfortunately, we don't have an item remover, so we can't really swap the items around. Let's roll down a little bit. Do we get anything good for Syndra? I'm just looking for good stuff for Syndra to pull in. So like Oxforce units, pretty decent. A second Syndra is pretty good. Random legendaries like another Fiddlesticks, Urgot, anything that CCs is pretty nice. This is the Duelist player. 3-star Yasuo with... Whoa, those are good Yasuo items. Very good against us. Let's see what happens though. We did move our clump to the front. I don't really mind that our Janna takes damage. She does get mana for it, but again, like you see how sorely missed the healing is. Luckily, this Nico, while she's only 1-star, she's doing enough damage to kind of kill this Yasuo. And we do end up winning this round, and I believe knocking this player out. Or no, they're at 6 life now, so we are in top 4 already. That's already good enough. But let's roll down every single turn. Let's just see what we can hit. Another Janna probably wouldn't be horrible. We actually end up rolling over it. I'm not sure. Oh, I guess because we need Nico still. But we see the Urgot there. Probably want to pick up Urgot. I roll over that one. Okay, never mind. I'm a genius. So probably sell Syndra. So Echo 2-star is such a big upgrade that we want to keep the Echo pair. And Syndra 2-star, it is good, but you just need this Nico 3 right away, or this Nico 2-star, because you saw against that Duelist player, her damage was sorely, sorely lacking. And with this build, she can finally actually do some stuff. And especially with 6 Spellslinger, Spellslinger gives a lot of AP, and then Guardbreaker and Giant Slayer give a lot of like damage multipliers. So it's just like a very, very good synergy. Oh, another reason why I have my Janna up front is because it's the shielding weather. So it's a little bit better or like safer, or like not safer. It's not as dangerous to leave her up front whenever you have that augment. But if you have like the damage one, probably want to put her in the back, or if you have the mana one, same thing. Is this Renekton going to beat us? No way, right? Okay, that was a close one. So we are in third place now, or yeah, third place. And we were able to beat the Duelist before, so we should be able to beat the Duelist player again. Oh, they got Fiora 3, never mind. We do get some goodies here, but we might have to lock the shop again, honestly. This is definitely a good example of like over-rolling. It's like a small mistake. Actually, like small mistake, because the late game doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, just don't roll if you can't afford to buy what's in the shop, you know? So when I was rolling for the Nico, like an Echo, that roll is fine because like we could sell something to kind of get the Echo or Nico, and it's a pretty big power spike. But here, I guess the only thing we could have gotten was the Echo, but maybe now that I think about it, the roll wasn't that bad, but it wasn't good by any means. We are able to finish that player off. We're against the Kaisa and Misfortune player. Let's see what we can get from this carousel. We want a Fiddlesticks item, so maybe the Hand of Justice, or that got taken. There are no good fiddle items here. I guess another Dragon Claw. Like, this person does deal magic damage, so it's not the worst thing ever, but not having any damage on your fiddle feels kind of bad. I rolled to 0 looking for an Echo 2-star, unable to hit it, but that's pretty much the only thing we're looking for. Syndra 2 doesn't really do that much, and Annie 2, I mean, like, it's so late in the game, doesn't do much either. But yeah, this player is very well spread out against us. The way Janet targets is she auto-targets to the biggest clump, and because of that, like there just aren't big clumps, so we just don't get much value from it. So I don't know if you noticed in this fight, but Fiddlesticks blocked a lot of damage from that Misfortune, the same way that our Annie kind of did. And this fight is so close. If we had, we actually won that one. I thought we'd lost upon watching. All right, so there's the Annie 2, huge power spike, am I right? And then we also get a Fiddlesticks. Still no Echo, but one thing you want to do is not buy the Fiddlesticks yet, because you want to have the Syndra thrown in. So I'm going to wait till Syndra throws in a unit, and then hopefully it is the other Syndra, and then I buy the Fiddlesticks. So it's the other Syndra goes in, buy the Fiddlesticks, that way they could both get thrown in. And then this fight, for some reason, our Misfortune, or not our Misfortune, our Janna just dies. So that's a pretty rough fight. And we end up losing that one, and I think, I just watched the replay, our Janna takes damage from the Misfortune, despite having the Fiddlesticks in front of her. So it's a little bit odd. Off the item armory, we get the choice of a Zephyr. Definitely going to grab that, just because like Zephyring their key unit is going to be really big. And let's roll down to 0. Hopefully we could get this Echo 2-star. It's a really big upgrade. Please. Please, we should sell this fiddle and look for it. Please. No. Sell this other fiddle? I don't know. Maybe we should have, but I end up not doing it. And does that cost the game? I don't really know, but what's really weird is the inconsistency, because we definitely saw in the first fight, the fiddle blocked all the Misfortune's damage, but then in the second fight, the Janna got hit by the Misfortune. So let's watch again this fight. So Misfortune ults, and Janna's definitely getting hit by that. So I don't know what causes fiddle to block it sometimes, but not all the time. That's a little strange, because that kind of was the deciding factor for like us doing well or badly versus his player. And I get it, now he has Kaisa 3 and we still have Echo 1, but we probably should have taken or put the game away on stage 6-6. Maybe some detective can rewatch all the fights and like figure out what actually happened, because that'd be kind of useful to know. But yeah, that's the Platinum game. Let's move on into the final Diamond game. So this game was actually user submitted on my Discord. And as we can see, this is high Diamond because there are a couple of Masters players here. This is going to be my first watch through of this VOD. So we'll definitely, oh my God, I'm just looking at the name. But we start off with a tier, and let's see what item we start out with. It's actually going to be, I think that is like 5 gold total or 6 gold. So this is going to be one of those high econ starts, it looks like. On this first shop here, I would personally pick up just everything because we could afford to. Always buy out the shops. One mistake that a lot of players make is not buying the entire shops in the early game. And while sometimes it can be a little daunting to buy out your whole shops like later on in the early game, the game is a little simplified, so you could kind of just get away with it. Double tier, so we're probably going to think about going some AP comp. We have a Silas 2-star. Perhaps this is going to be an Anma squad game. So slight mistake there. I don't know if you all noticed in the earlier games, but I never did what this player just did. So potentially you could get a gold drop, which means you did not need to sell those other champions in the case of that. That didn't happen now, but another mistake is completing the Silas 2-star. So you may have noticed I always wait for the round to start before buying the third unit to upgrade someone. And that's because it gives you the option to sell your entire bench if you want to make an interest threshold. So now is another weird point. So let's take a look at the augments again. This augment selection was taken way too quickly. I would have probably taken Cluttered Mind here, and even though Duelist is a good comp, there's no Locket components on the bench, and there aren't many Duelists on the board either. You have one Gangplank, one Kale, and I feel like it's not enough to justify skipping over Cluttered Mind, especially when you don't have a Locket component. Nevertheless, the game's not over, so you can still definitely play it, and you still do get the 4 Duelist start, which is still pretty nice. For me personally, and this is still a good spot, I just think that the other choice was better, and maybe take a little more time thinking through the augment phases because it is super duper duper important. This board should probably streak pretty decently. I don't know if this can 5 streak, but definitely like at least win like 3 rounds out of stage 2, probably 4. I definitely would have also built a static Shiv here. So you could run either Twisted Fate carry or Vayne carry in the Duelist comp. Most people run oh no. Most people run the Vayne carry, but Twisted Fate is definitely another good option here. And if you have 2 tiers, you kind of have to do that. Also, Silas 2, I don't know about selling Silas 2-star. I understand that Sivir makes better use of the spatula, but the raw stats that Silas 2-star gives your team is just way too much to kind of pass up on. Again, like I'm not going to say like, oh, slam static Shiv again, because obviously after you don't make the decision in the first round, you're not going to build it in the later rounds either. But item economy is very important to think about. So in a Duelist comp, what items could tier possibly build? It could build maybe a tank item. Maybe you build like a Protector's Vow or a Redemption. But if you're doing that, the Chain Vest is going to be much, much better for a Locket. And then for Redemption, you're never going to go for a belt on Carousel. You're going to be building Locket components or finishing like your bow item first. So that's another reason to just slam the bow, the static Shiv right away. Another item that could be built is Handed Justice, but you don't want 2 Handed Justices. You just really need 1 of them. Now let's see what is on the Carousel. So Sword, yeah, that's probably decent. Finish up the item for Sivir, and that should be good to go. Runons is probably slightly better in the early game, but Giant Slayer is better late game, so it depends on what you're kind of playing for here. Do we want to make 20 here? We could sell the Annie and play the extra Kale. Shojin, interesting. Okay, I've never seen Shojin in Duelist, but we'll see how it works out here. So there is one scenario where this works out extremely well, and that is if you get a Syndra. Syndra with Duelist Spatula is one of the best combinations you could ever get. Combine that with a Spear of Shojin, and you're going to throw in like your entire bench over the course of a fight. However, we have to rely on hitting a Syndra, so can you really rely on hitting a specific legendary and building for it in stage 2? Personally, for me, I don't really think so. You can think about it this way. Anyone ever play Infinite Teams? Tell me how many times you wanted Ezreal in your team and it just never really happened. I know Vayne can kind of use Shojin, but the Shojin build is definitely geared more towards the spread shot augment, not so much general Duelist. I'm not entirely sure if that was what this player was going for from the beginning, but Shojin's one of those items where it kind of baits people because it's very, very, very good in the spread shot build. But if you don't have spread shot, you'd much rather just have general attack damage items on her, such as like Runons, Deathblade, Last Whisper, Giant Slayer, Guardbreaker, things like that. Just like general damage items are going to do a little bit better because the Spear of Shojin gets you to cast more, but most of her damage is just from regular autos. She's a Duelist, so she just attacks really quickly, and that's where you just get the most damage. The reason why you want Spear of Shojin and Spread Shot is because Spread Shot directly only increases her spell damage. So in order to get more value out of that, you want to cast more spells, so that's why Shojin is a lot better for that build. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Oh, we get a Gangplank 2-star. That is very, very welcome. All right, so another sword. Okay, yeah, sword on the Vayne. If there is a Spread Shot augment on stage 3-2, this player wins the game. Nyla's very nice to play in. We get to 6 Duelists. Do we level up here? I think so. We're at 37 life. There's a 2-star Gangplank just chilling on our board or on our bench. You only lose 1 gold of interest from doing this. I know that we're not on a streak, but you don't really lose that much from leveling up. I think I would do it, but not doing it is also perfectly fine. So I actually would hold off on slamming the item here, because if you do end up getting spread shot, you'd want to make a death blade with that sword and then have the bow as like a general third item. So just because of that, it's good that this player held off on building the Giant Slayer. But let's see what happens. This player is playing a Locket, also duelist, so this is going to be a contested game. Very interesting. I wonder why this player has bow, sword, sword, and not building an item with duelist. That's kind of crazy. But end up losing anyways. Had we leveled up to level 6, probably would have won this one, because the 6 duelist power spike is pretty big. Component grab bag, trade sector, preparation. Components isn't that bad. Yeah, I wasn't really in love with any of those. I'm not sure if I would have rerolled, but yeah, Jeweled Lotus, decent. Trade sector also would have been fine, because sometimes the win condition is getting a Vayne 3-star. Oh no, you have to play 6 duelists. Okay, there we go. And trade sector also gives you a lot more early game or like mid game, because over the next like 2 rounds, you'll probably 2-star your entire board. Another thing, you have this baby Nico on your bench. So getting 3-star Vayne is actually pretty easy. So trade sector gets a little bit more value whenever you're in one of those baby Nico games. And that definitely is one of them. So I think trade sector would have done a lot better here. At the same time, Jeweled Lotus is still pretty solid. Holy cow. I guess when that happens, you don't need trade sector. But Jeweled Lotus is still fine. It's not like going to lose this player the game or anything like that. All right. So, oh my God, this person's name is Daddy Fist Me Please, and they're at 69 health right now. There's, I guess we're living in a simulation. One weird thing is that we are in Locket positioning, but we don't have a Locket yet. So maybe spread out a little bit before doing that. Maybe play the Kale over, actually no, I saw a Gangplank 1 on the bench, so I thought there was a Gangplank 1 on the board, but it's a Gangplank 2. But had that been a Gangplank 1, I'd actually prefer the Kale over the Gangplank, just because we don't have Locket yet, so we don't need to place everyone in the middle like that. What do we want here? Is the Spatula good? Spatula is actually pretty decent, because it gives us a copy of Vayne, but that gets taken. Probably sword is going to be the best option, or a Locket component. So Locket's very, very important. It's more important than any of the damage items. So going for like a rod or a chain here probably wouldn't be that bad, but I can't fault the sword either. So what I would have done is, remember how on stage 3-1, I was like, let's wait to build the Giant Slayer, because we were waiting to see if we get the Vayne carry augment. Since we didn't, I would have built Giant Slayer right after that, just to get as much value from the item as I can. We get to the 8 duelist power spike, but not enough room to play it. Deathblade obviously is really good, so the greeting did pay off. And then, yeah, look at this. Static Shiv ends up being built anyways. So you could have had this item since stage 2-1, so that would have had value in 8 different fights. And again, in a duelist build, the tier's not building anything. There really isn't that many items that you're like really going for. And Twisted Fate is perfectly fine with this item. He doesn't need like spell slingers to really make that great of use of it. He just needs to attack a lot, and duelists definitely do that. Who are we facing here? This is a scope weapons Kaisa. Very interesting. That's a little too much attack speed for the Kaisa. This person's level 7 though, win streaking the entire game. Sometimes players just get that start so they get a ton of gold, but I don't know about the scope weapons. That might be, I would have re-rolled that. Maybe they re-rolled into it, and that could be a little unlucky. There's a Morgana there. Probably just hold on to the Morg for fun. Yeah, and then just chill here. You want to rush level 8 to play 8 duelists right now. Another thing I like is the scouting going on in this game. You may have noticed me playing. Since I was on my Smurf, I'm not going to scout when I'm Smurfing, just because I'm too lazy to do it. But scouting is something that's very, very, very important, because you get to know if you're contested, you get to know your matchup. So we saw like there's one Anima Squad player, one duelist player at least, and that means Vayne 3 might not be in the cards. Perhaps this player scouted that before, and that's why they pass up on Trade Sector. I still think Trade Sector has a lot of value, because with the baby Nico, there's still a pretty decent chance of getting it. And also, just getting 2-star Vayne, 2-star Nyla is already a huge power spike. So we could have used the Trade Sector to kind of play around that. So let's see what happens at Wolf Camp. Definitely going to level up to level 7 soon. 2 swords drop. So no Locket components. That's really, really dangerous. But screw it. Just build double Deathblade. Why not? Let's have some fun around here. So this player opts to roll a little bit. I think rolling is fine. I do prefer going to level 8. Maybe if we just pass one turn, waited for the next turn, leveled up to 8, and then played 8 duelists, that may have been stronger. Because I know Vayne 2 is very important. I know Twisted Fate 2 is very important. But if you have the option to just play 8 duelists, it kind of gives the same amount of power as a 2-star, except it's guaranteed. But definitely build the Deathblade here. Please build the Deathblade. Nope, doesn't happen. It's okay. Because what other items is this sword going to turn into? There's really not much, right? And since duelists give a lot of attack speed, all you need to add to the units that you have is attack damage. So it's the perfect combination. I get that there are already 3 swords on this Vayne, but not getting the value out of the item for like a couple of rounds is just not worth it in a comp like Duelist, which really relies around winning in the early and mid game. Let's see what the augment is going to be. It could be gold, 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 but we get a hero. Gifted normally is really good. Okay, I guess spread shot. All right, let's go. If you have Locket, it's really good, but would the Twisted Fate augment have been better? I'm trying to think. So there's a Vayne 2-star. Whoa, no. No. Okay, so next time that happens, just sell one of the units and then pick up the Vayne Orb, because the Baby Nico has more value than the Vayne Orb. 2 reasons for that. The first one being, Baby Nico can turn into any 3, 2, or 1 cost unit. The Vayne Orb can only turn into Vayne. Second off, remember how we were contested? There's 1 Anima Squad player, 1 Duelist player at least, and it might be like some random player playing a Vayne also. If Vayne becomes out of the pool, so all the Vaynes are taken, and you pick up that orb, it will not drop a Vayne. It'll drop 3 gold. I remember a tournament happened that I played in a while ago, and that same exact scenario happened, except it was with a Samira. So the Baby Nico, it's even if the champion is not in the champion pool, it'll still make a copy of it. So that is a big, big doo-doo there. Another thing I don't really like is that we're holding on to a lot of stuff on our bench when we're low gold and we really want to hit level 8. So Gangplank 3 is not going to really do anything. We don't really need to hold on to that. And then, yeah, Nyla 3 is great, but we don't have any items on our Nyla right now. The Fiora, same thing. If you don't have an item for someone, it's not really worth rolling for them unless you have a lot of Vaynes. Because this game, we might not even roll for Vayne. We might just go fast 9 instead. If we took Trade Sector and maybe we had a couple more copies of Vayne or both, then yeah, you would probably re-roll for the Vayne. But in this game, yeah, not really. Here, interesting play would be taking the Syndra. No, okay. I don't know how no Lockets is going to go. But Syndra is definitely very interesting because with the Duelist spat, you just get so much value. Again, the bow could be used on the TF here, whereas the sword, it's going to be better used on the Vayne, in my opinion. But I don't think these decisions are going to like make or break your game. It's going to be tough though, because without Vayne 3, and we're sitting at 7 Duelists still, I'm just not too sure what the future holds. I definitely would have just picked up the Syndra and then just sold the Annie and put the Duelist spat on Syndra, because it is just, I thought this was what the player was going for in the very beginning. And yeah, this feels a lot weaker. Look at this. The player is scouting a lot. I like that a lot. Yeah, the other Duelist player only has 1 Vayne. Okay, the Anima Squad player, it looks like they switched to Star Guardian from what it seems like. So pretty safe there. Only 1 other player. They only have 1 Vayne. Let's move on into the next round. This is stage 4-7. We're actually playing the other Duelist player. Very interesting. I think our team's going to win because Spread Shot is just super, super powerful. And the 2-star TF that the opponent has only has 1 item for some reason. So this match, yeah, it's not even close. I'm trying to think back for the augment selection on stage 4-2. I'm wondering if Vayne was the best option there. I know Spread Shot's very good. It's extremely good in a Duelist build, but we just didn't have that many copies of Vayne, and without Vayne 3-star, it's going to be a little tricky. I wonder if the Twisted Fate support augment would have been better, or even the Twisted Fate gold augment. Luckily, there is going to be 1 Locket, so that's going to be very nice. I guess we build the Giant Slayer and a Zephyr for the Twisted Fate. Giant Slayer for the Twisted Fate, Zephyr for just some random unit. Oh, no, not ZZ Rot. No. So he puts a belt on the Nyla. Is he planning to Zephyr the Nyla? I mean, that isn't horrible, but it's not good to put it on Nyla because you can't move the Nyla around a bunch. Oh, is it going to be a no item angle? Okay, I definitely would not do that. It's for sure Giant Slayer Zephyr on like your Gangplank, or Giant Slayer on TF, Zephyr on Gangplank, and you just go from there. Also, I'm not sure why they put the Twisted Fate and Vayne next to each other, because look at this, the Ace Soul is able to hit both of them from there. You may wonder like why players spread out their units. It's really just for AoE effects, and the only time they clump them is if the units synergize really well together. For example, if you're running an Ace comp, let's say you have a Misfortune in the corner, sometimes there is a reason to put your secondary damage dealer. So if you're playing Anima squad, let's say you put your Vayne next to your Misfortune, it is worth putting them near each other, because the Ace proc should be able to happen a little more often. Another time you could do it is if you're playing like a Sure Shot build and you're building like a Last Whisper on your Samira, and then you put your Sivir closer to your Samira, and then they both benefit from the Last Whisper. That could be another reason to do it too. All right, so we build the ZZ Rot, but not the Bloodthirster. I wonder what we're saving the Bloodthirster for. So if you build the ZZ Rot, you would just slam the Bloodthirster on like Twisted Fate, for example. So remember how I said a lot of the mistakes or like disagreements that I had with the play here probably wouldn't affect the game that much? Well, I think the decision to not build the Giant Slayer and the Zephyr is going to affect it a lot now, because those are just really good items for both champions, and we're not building one of the items that we have, and the other one is a ZZ Rot portal, so we're pretty much just down like 1.5 items right now, which obviously isn't a situation you want to be in. Also, we all-in'd a little bit too early, so leveling up is fine because you get the 8 duelist power spike, but everything's already 2-starred, and you're not realistically going to hit 3 stars of both Vayne and Nyla, or like either or. And I feel like we weren't in a, because there's only what, like 20 some gold, 30 some gold that we had, and hitting 3 copies or 3 or 4 copies of them just isn't really going to happen. We're also not on our last life yet, so we're not in like that desperate of measures yet. Duelist Spatula obviously is really good here. Giant Slayer pretty solid. Maybe even like second Static Shiv would be pretty good too. Even RFC wouldn't be horrible. Titans is okay. Whoa, why the Rage Blade? So Rage Blade is good if you're doing Spellslinger Twisted Fate, because in Spellslinger Twisted Fate, oh no, we skipped Syndra. Syndra's very good in Duelist. You have to play Syndra in Duelist if you have the Spatula. So Rage Blade very good in the Spellslinger version of Twisted Fate. The reason why is because he doesn't get attack speed from any of his traits. You get 2 Duelists, that's it, because you run Fiora. But when you're running 8 Duelists, you don't need any more attack speed. This Twisted Fate's going to cap out really, really quickly, and the Rage Blade's going to actually end up being wasted in a lot of these fights. So you'd much rather have the RFC if you want attack speed, because it gives you more immediate attack speed, or you just go for a damage item, which is going to be better than both of these options, such as the Giant Slayer. Even in the Spellslinger build, I think Rage Blade is a little overrated. I see a lot of players greeting for the Rage Blade when they could have just slammed other items instead. Oh man, the Syndra keeps popping up, but obviously if you don't pick it up the first time, you're not going to pick it up the second time, but that's okay. In future Duelist games, just run the Duelist Syndra, especially with the Spirit Shojin, you will not regret it. Again, I do respect the scouting. This player is scouting every single round. That's more than I scout even on like my main account. But I definitely need to scout more. That's one of my weaknesses. I'd say like this player plays very quickly, so that's why he has time to scout. I play very slowly, so I often don't have time to. I'm also pretty lazy. You didn't really see it in the games we played during this series, but normally when I play for real, like anyone who's watched my tournament games knows, I take forever picking my augments, and sometimes I take too long and it costs me like a roll down, for example. But most of the time, I think thinking on augments is very important, because augments give you the most power in the game and you can't go backwards. If you mess up a roll down a little bit, you could kind of make up for it on the next turn, but picking the wrong augment, it affects your entire game like forever. So that's why I spend a little more time there than I probably should, but that doesn't mean you should be skipping over it really quickly, because I noticed this player takes like 2 seconds on the augments, probably just looks at the data and then just clicks according to that. And I guess that's enough to get to Diamond, but if you really want to push further or make getting to Diamond a lot easier, or just try to become a better player in general, you should use data. I'm not saying don't use data, but also figure out what's best for your team. Because again, even though there was a 4 Duelist start in the early game, the items were not that great. And then despite taking that and having 4 Duelists, not building the Static Shiv was probably like another major mistake. Probably could have 5-streaked with the Silas as well. So that would have given this player a lot more gold this game. But overall, this is turning out okay. Spread shot is very, very powerful. And if a Vayne 3 is in the cards, which it almost is, we're 1 off Vayne 3. So now is the point where you just donkey roll every turn. And there's a Vayne 3, very, very nice. And these are probably one of the best items you could possibly get on Vayne with this item combo. Probably Infinity Edge, Deathblade, Shojin is the best, but since we have the Jeweled Lotus, adding in an extra Giant Slayer just like makes this like chef's kiss, you know? I would have preferred even double Deathblade, Shojin. I think that's even better, and then have the Giant Slayer on your TF or the bow item on your TF. But you know, it is what it is. We are facing the Kaisa Recon MF player, and whoa, this fight with Vayne 3 looks a lot different. Yeah, Vayne 3 spread shot, everybody. Like, imagine if we saved the Nico or used it differently. This game could have gone like even better. We do have to be careful of this LeBlanc hacker player. That is one of the counters to the Duelist comp. Duelists get countered by it because you have 5 frontliners and you have a locket, and this LeBlanc just says no thanks to it. So watch this fight. It's almost impossible to beat this comp because it doesn't matter how powerful your Vayne is. Look at this. LeBlanc kills her in 2 seconds. Oh, actually, it took 5 seconds. So this was already a good fight RNG fight, and yeah, it just gets demolished. So that's a little unfortunate. It looks like this is a 3rd or a 2nd then, but that's still overall like a pretty solid game. On this carousel, you could probably just take the Shroud. Please take the Shroud. Uh-oh. Okay. Redemption isn't horrible, but Shroud is much better. Luckily, there is still one way to win this game, and that is if there ever is a 1v1 with a LeBlanc player, you could always like frontline your Vayne or like backline everyone and lock at your Vayne, and sometimes you'll be able to win those. But if you're facing 2 different players, it's too difficult to kind of like frontline a random unit, so you can't really counter it with positioning in that sense. But just always check your matchups. This player is doing a good job seeing who he's facing every single round. So he knows exactly what's going to happen. So he's facing the Kaisa players. He's not going to frontline his Vayne or anything like that. Does he win this round now that Kaisa 3 exists? I still think he does win. Let's watch the fight, though. Okay, I promise you, I know the win chance thing is there. I did not look forward into the VOD. It's a ghost board, so it's just automatically weaker. That's how you can kind of decide who wins sometimes. Still a bit of a journey to get to 2nd place. This other player's at 16 life, so they have to take a medium-sized loss in order to finally get out. But yeah, always scout. We're going to be guaranteed facing the Kaisa player, so we could kind of just stay put for now. And yeah, there's not really too much you need to pay attention to around positioning. Like, yeah, you can position like maybe your Yasuo better. What I like to do, I like putting my Oxforce units on the outside and have them tank first, and then have the Gangplank and Yasuo kind of on the inside. But sometimes you want Yasuo on the outside as well because he gets better angles that way. But since they changed his targeting, I don't know if that's important to do anymore. But yeah, I still think the Duelist player wins this one because spread shot is spread shot. So if you look at the augments, the scope weapons is definitely not helping this other player. And that is going to be a 2nd place, and the other player lost, the hacker lost. So this could be a 1st. Luckily, we only have to win 1 round against this player because it's stage 7, and the round damage in stage 7 is so nuts. Why did we buy everything there? We just lost a gold of interest. I guess they're 3 cost units, so it reduces the pool a bit. Probably ZZ-Rot, yeah, you want to use it against the hacker. So roll a little bit. Probably should have picked up some of the legendaries or something like that in case. I guess we're going for the Nyla 3 start. Is Nyla 3 even going to change that much? Definitely backline the Nyla right now. I would have ZZ-Rotted the Fiora. Okay, please backline your dudes. Or frontline your Fiora. Okay, yes. Okay. Maybe there's a chance. I would have left Annie in the front line because you don't want everyone to run up. Okay, let's see how this fight goes. Oh, you also want to protect your Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate does a lot of damage, so losing him is definitely not ideal, but this fight's going to be close. Where's the other Z? How did Nyla die? Holy cow. Yeah, Twisted Fate did 0 damage, so that's a big difference in this fight. But 2nd place, not bad. We already went over a lot of the mistakes, mainly the augments, I would say. and the item slamming. I definitely think the most interesting decision is going to be which augment to take on stage 4 too, because there are a lot of different options here. Like spread shot was a bit of a reach because we only have one copy of Vayne. It's kind of hard to get to 3-star Vayne from that point. I would have definitely taken maybe like a Twisted Fate augment instead. And then not getting the lockets early, we would have had a lot more health. This Nico, oh no, it's okay. But hopefully everyone enjoyed this video. And if you want to get featured like this player, definitely join the Discord because I will announce when I'll be needing footage for some other videos. So definitely go there. I forget what the Discord link is now, but like it's in the description below somewhere. So just click on that and head on over. But I hope this helps people get to the rank that they want. Maybe I'll be doing more unranked to diamond ones. Maybe I'll be doing a diamond to master one. Let me know which one you want in the comments down below. And last but not least, for the BunnyMuffins tip of the day, we already mentioned it before in the video, but for everyone who missed it, whenever there is a portable armory or a gold augment, which could potentially give portable forge, always make sure to look out for blitzcrank hooks. And if you're too lazy to scout, just put a unit in the corner that's not your main carry.